The government moves to ban no-fault evictions as it launches a new crackdown on rogue landlords.
Top of the morning, it's 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 17th of May. This is GB News Breakfast with myself, Martin Dorby, and of course, the amazing Isabel Webster.
Welcome to the programme. Here's what's leading the news this morning. The government is today launching new measures to protect tenants with a pledge to tackle injustice in the private sector. The plans, including a banning of Section 21, which allows landlords to evict tenants without reason.
And it comes as Sir Keir Starmer vows to make Labour the party of house building with a pledge to build more homes on the Green Belt.
The Prime Minister will fly to Japan later today, where he'll unveil a new defence and technology pact with the country. On the trip, he'll also join allies, including US President Joe Biden, for a G7 meeting where he'll attempt to galvanise further support for Ukraine.
And the Princess of Wales admitted she never expected to become a royal before she fell in love with Prince William. Speaking at an event alongside Dame Kelly Holmes, she added she's still learning every day how to be a princess.
And we want to hear from you this morning. I thought those comments were really touching.
Yeah.
She was really just so effortless and graceful. It just feels like she was born into it.
That's the line I knew you'd come up with, because you adore her so much.
I do, I know. Let us know if you're with me on that. GBViews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at GBnews on any of the topics we're covering this morning.
So to our top story this morning, the government will move to ban no-fault evictions as part of a new set of major reforms to the rental sector.
Under a bill being tabled today, landlords will no longer be able to evict tenants without reason, but they will be handed more powers to remove antisocial tenants.
Housing Secretary Michael Gove said the change would tackle the injustice in the private sector and create a quality, affordable and fair housing system for all.
Well, it comes as Sir Keir Starmer vows to make Labour the party of house building with a pledge to build homes on the UK's Green Belt. Fraser
Myers, the Deputy Editor of Spiked, joined us this morning. Now, Fraser, so there's a big battle going on here for the votes of Generation Rent.
Yes, 11 million people in the UK are renters. This, it's a sector that's exploded in recent years as the price of houses has become unaffordable. Lots of young people, especially, unable to get on the housing ladder. And when you're a renter, you are pretty powerless. You can be, at the moment, evicted for no reason. Some of the other measures in this bill will let you request a pet, but also, meaning you can't be evicted for having children. I've got a friend who, when she fell pregnant, was told she's got to get out. You can't stay in this flat anymore. So it is actually important to rebalance the power between renters and landlords. Now, a lot of landlords are probably going to push back against this. There are there are exceptions. You're allowed to give enough 4 months' notice, I think it is, in this bill. Antisocial tenants can be evicted more easily, which is obviously completely understandable. So it's not a complete stripping of landlords' rights. But perhaps they're the more typical Tory voter, so it'll be interesting to see the politics.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are allegedly still loopholes or workarounds for landlords. Some suggestion, and it depends which way you view this. If you are a landlord, perhaps it's a good thing you've still got the chance to evict tenants by basically finding a workaround, which would be, for example, raising rents to an unaffordable level to get people out that you don't want. That's obviously morally dubious. But, there are still opportunities for this to be mistreated.
So there isn't going to be anything in the bill to stop landlords from, say, whacking up the rent by 20%, which is actually a very common experience now. There is going to be provisions to allow landlords to sell their houses, of course, and if you want to move in a family member is another loophole. I think people can understand why those loopholes would exist, but will they be exploited? I mean, this is a bill designed, Gove said, to tackle the rogue landlords. I think rogue landlords will always find a way around these laws.
But there are some common sense methods in here. Black mould, a clampdown on that. We've been covering that a lot on GB News. Terrible living conditions for some of the poorest, so that's a good thing. But isn't it interesting how Gove is blaming the shortage on immigration? He would do, wouldn't he, rather than them not building houses. We're at the second lowest house building level since World War II. What do you make of Starmer's idea to build on the Greenbelt? Because that's going to really raise the shackles of the NIMBYs and the Tories and the Shires.
I think it's pretty brave of Starmer to come out and say, let's build on the Greenbelt, because that is absolutely necessary. There's no, we will always talk endlessly about building on brownfield sites. There just aren't enough for the houses we need. And you know, people will raise immigration. If you could stop immigration tomorrow, and we still not have enough houses for the people who live here. The problem is the lack of house building.
I mean, even if that is true, to someone like me who grew up in a greenbelt area, that horrifies me. And I think that, you know, I would have thought that was electoral suicide, but perhaps in the red wall, this isn't an issue. He's obviously made a calculation here.
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of young people who are struggling, particularly with the housing crisis, will understand this, and you know, it's good to sort of play for their votes. The other thing, you know, that maybe Starmer should do this, and maybe Labour should do this, is we do need to dispel some myths about the green belt. A lot of things that are labelled green belt are not green and pleasant lands. They're not nice meadows. Sometimes they could be, you know, scrubland, or there are areas of like there are some examples in the Times of like petrol stations going derelict, but they're technically under green belt land, so they're impossible to knock down and build on.
But politically, it's canny because those kind of areas you're talking about, they'll be fought between the Tories and the Lib Dems, won't they? So in a sense, Labour are kind of making a policy which won't affect their voter base anyway, but it will appeal to the vast majority of people now who are stuck in generation rent because there are simply no places to buy. So actually, this is canny politics, perhaps, from Starmer.
I think so, and it's good politics on the national level. Let's see how his MPs react on the local level, because Lisa Nandy has been accused, for instance, of trying to block homes in her own constituency in Wigan. And I think it's one of those things that, I mean, that's the classic NIMBY thing, isn't it? It's not in my backyard.
Yeah.
Everyone is in favour of house building in principle, you'd hope. Everyone is in favour of new infrastructure, but they don't like it next door to them.
Is there a risk that these tighter restrictions for landlords will push more of them out of it? I mean, we've been hearing increasingly that it's no longer lucrative, that landlords are leaving the sector in their drove. We need landlords.
Yeah.
You know, if this is going to make it less favourable to be a landlord, does this not exacerbate the whole housing problem, especially given they aren't able to push through the house building plans that they'd like to? I mean, Gove desperately wants to, doesn't he? But he's got a problem with his backbenchers.
Well, you know, that's the thing. All of this comes down to the supply. It's good to give tenants more rights. I think that's absolutely the right thing. But ultimately, tenants and would-be home buyers are screwed because there simply isn't enough supply, and so owners have the upper hand.
I wonder if we could turn now to Rishi. He's on a bit of a charm offensive. He appeared to the Council of Europe, saying to please be more transparent and fair. I think he's got about as much chance of appealing to the good nature of the Council of Europe as we had appealing to the good nature of the European Union. Is this actually getting any... Has it got any teeth, or is this him posturing for the British domestic media?
Yeah, so, I mean, he's been given pretty short shrift by members of the Council of Europe. The parliamentary leader, a guy called Dutch man called Tiny Cox, don't laugh. He has said...
It's breakfast.
He said... you know, you can't have a la carte approach to human rights. Rishi's particularly interested in reforming this Article 39 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which has been used to block the flights to Rwanda. I mean, everyone else at this conference is talking about Ukraine, and Rishi has gone there to talk about migration. So yes, it does have a feel that he is, you know, trying to talk to a domestic audience rather than to his European partners, which is understandable because there are manoeuvres happening, especially on the right wing of the Conservative Party.
Yeah, and what do you make of these so-called manoeuvres? I mean, Michael Gove, we've already talked about this morning. He was giving a speech yesterday at this NatCon conference. It certainly felt almost like a leadership contest.
Yeah, I've been at the NatCon conference the past few days, and it's interesting. Certainly the politicians, like Suella Braverman was there on Monday, Rees-Mogg was there on Monday as well. They feel like they're setting out their stall. You know, they're trying to say what conservatism means to them. The rest of the conference is a bit loopy. A lot of it about childbirth and babies, which is a long way away from where the Conservative Party is and where the country is.
But does it speak to the fact that, you know, where the party is in terms of satisfaction levels, that this kind of effectively fringe event that I'd never heard, apparently it's in its 8th year, second one it's ever been held in this country, it's the sort of thing you'd have from an opposition party. But the fact that it's getting so much prominence, does that speak to the fact that there isn't an awful lot of confidence ahead of the election next year off the back of unsuccessful council elections recently? I think
that's right. I think there's a lack of confidence going into the next election, but also under Rishi Sunak there is a sense of what on earth is the party for. You know, they seem to stand for stability for the status quo. but this is not a great, reforming government. It's certainly disappointing a lot of people who voted for Brexit. What is their appeal to those red wall voters who trusted the Tories in 2019? That's not very clear. It seems as if, actually the kind of voter that Sunak is trying to appeal to is the sort of older, more traditional, I guess, liberal, suburban Tory vote, rather than the newer coalition that Boris Johnson was able to establish.
Well, that's a name that came to your lips. This conference kicked off on Saturday when Priti Patel says Sunak was overseeing the managed decline of the Conservative Party. Are people like Suella Braverman laying out their stall, or is actually this a warm-up act for the return of King Boris Johnson? That's what most Tories want, right?
Well, yeah, so it's interesting. That was a different conference, So we've had two right-wing conferences.
Yes.
The Conservative Democratic Organisation.
It's that was People's Liberation Front.
That was set up explicitly after Boris was ousted because they felt it was unfair, that he...
it was about grassroots Conservatives.
Yes, exactly. And it's Lord Cruddas, one of Boris's big donors, is one of the main people behind that. So you have one conference essentially calling for the return of the King Boris, and another that I think is less interested in the NatCon conference is less interested in the machinations of the Tory party than in the ideology of conservatism. So it's interesting things going on there. Will Boris come back? Probably not.
Well, the Boris circus is... We don't know the outcome of that story. We're waiting to find out. I think it's either this week or next week, the result of the parliamentary inquiry into whether or not he misled the House of Commons. And, if he's found to have been in breach of it, then he could be banned and he could be out.
If he's suspended for more than 10 days, there will be a by-election.
And speaking of by-elections, the three MPs that he's given peerages to as his gift as a former MP is also potentially stitching up Rishi Sunak. So Boris Johnson continues to make front-page news and have electoral implications for himself and for the party.
It seems at the moment only in a negative way for the
and when you look at the margins, Fraser, in some of these seats, they're pretty marginal seats. These could be Tory losses. I'm sure the Lib Dems will be flooding these areas.
Absolutely. Another huge electoral setback for Rishi Sunak would be on the cards. It's interesting that Alistair Jack, the Scottish Secretary, has been nominated for a peerage. He said he's not going to step down to go to the House of Lords, which is quite sensible. But another repeat of the local elections that will just increase the calls for Rishi's head. But even some of his rivals, Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is not a fan of Rishi, has said we would look insane to have another leadership election after we've had so many in the past year or so. There
we go.
Which probably means they'll do it.
Fraser, thank you very much. We'll see more from Fraser Myers a little bit later on in the programme.
Super. OK, the Prime Minister has pledged to give farmers more protections when it comes to trade deals as he held a first-of-its-kind Farm to Fork summit at Downing Street yesterday. It
comes as a new study reveals food costs have doubled due to inflation, with meat, yoghurt and vegetables among the items that have skyrocketed in price.
Now let's speak to farmer and wholesaler David Catt now. So, David, consumers are seeing some extraordinary rises, sometimes as many as double pricing on things like pasta and sausages. What's behind these stratospheric price rises?
Shortage in supply. Initially, with production in Eastern Europe, Ukraine's a massive producer of cereals and oils. That started the process off. But what's happening in this country now is production is falling off a cliff. Egg producers, for almost a year now, eggs have been in very, very short supply because the cost of electricity and feeds went up very, very high, and the farmers couldn't produce the eggs for the price the supermarkets want to pay for them, so they packed up. And the problem is with these, once they've gone, they don't reappear because the capital investment is too high to come through. Now, what is worrying now is production, vegetable production. Because of Brexit, we haven't got the freedom of labour. I know they're issuing visas for workers to come in from Indonesia and India and other parts of the world. But they're very complicated, full of red tape, take ages to do. So a lot of producers and growers are saying they can't be doing with it, so they're just packing up. Apples are being grubbed at an alarming rate to plant up vineyards now because the vineyards we can mechanically harvest. And the costs are just so high now to produce these products that at the end of the day, they're not worth the risk for the prices we're going to get back. So when you get a short supply, the prices go up. We saw this with the salad stuff in the spring. The English growers, glasshouse growers, couldn't afford to grow any stuff because of the cost of gas and electricity. And then there was a weather feature in Spain, cold weather, created a shortage of supply, and the prices went through the roof. In fact, the supermarkets wouldn't allow their packers enough money to pay for them, so they went without. And what worries me now is potatoes, especially in the last week or two, have gone. Certain chipping potatoes have gone from £300 a tonne ex-farm. They're now currently £800 a tonne ex-farm, and this year's crop is not going to get through till the beginning of next year's crop, which is being planted at the moment. We've had very wet conditions in the spring, and so everyone's late planting. So the yields are already beginning to drop off for next year. So we're looking at shortages for next year.
Yeah, it's a worrying picture, David. What do you make of some of the suggestions that the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has been putting out there this week? She wants to see fruit picking being done by British people. Doesn't understand why she needs to make visa exemptions to import labour for that. And the suggestion is that, you know, actually they should increase the wages of fruit pickers, and perhaps with, as you talked about, the mechanisation of vineyards and things, they were talking about, you know, making that wider so there'd be higher paid but British jobs with mechanisation. So sort of developments in tech as well.
Yeah, certain things can be harvested mechanically, but at the end of the day, you have to get out in the weather and go and pick these things like cauliflowers and cabbages and stuff. They have to be cut by hand, and we need people to do it, but it's seasonal. And the problem is it's not a full-time. They're not full-time work. I mean, the myth that the wages are low on the farms. Some of the guys that were coming across from Europe are earning very, very good money, but they're prepared to work long hours. You can't mechanise all of it. That's the problem.
OK, David, there's a report on the front of the Metro today saying that 2.5 million people are too sick to work, and that's an increase of 400,000 since the pandemic. You speak there very passionately about it being difficult to attract British workers despite the high wages. Would you like to see some joined-up thinking, perhaps, between people on benefits and the supply of labour to you?
Yeah, but the labour has to be here to work. You know, it has to be either locally based or, I mean, a lot of the farms that have the labour at the moment, they live in caravans on the farms, and it's okay. Say that if there's 1 million people in London want to come work out the fields, it's actually getting to work and doing it. It's having people in the place where the work is. That's the flexibility that having the migrant labour coming in doing works.
Yeah, and look, David, you've come on the programme before, and we had a huge response to what you had to say then. People really took notice of what you had to say. Just tell us this morning what it means to you as someone who runs a family business. I mean, you run a farm as well as a wholesaler. Why you're passionate about what you do, and I suppose why you worry about the future of farming and agriculture in this country.
Well, I've farmed for 50 years and I've wholesaled out of necessity for 46, because when Father bought the farm in the early 70s, I was given an opportunity to make it work, and the business started growing a crop of onions, which I went out in the winter. They were my wages when I left college, and sold them in a transit van, and that's where the wholesale business started. And the two businesses work hand in hand. So we diversified back in the 70s through necessity. What worries me is we've seen what's happened with energy, where if we become too reliant on foreign imports of sort of energy, we saw what's happened to the prices of energy costs and how it's really damaging our economy. Now, if we start getting shortages of food, which is seriously worrying me, I'm seriously worrying about how many people are going out of the business. I think the pig herd is down, the sow herd is down by 30% of what it was 3 years ago. If we get shortages of food supply, politics go out the window. Yeah. You've got hungry people, which we haven't had in this country for a very, very, very long time. Politics becomes very, very difficult with hungry people. And we must be self-sustainable in food production. We did it after the Second World War. There were guaranteed prices for products, so we couldn't afford to import, so we produced this produce, brought at home with guaranteed prices, which encouraged growers to produce the products And a lot of people got off their backsides, worked very, very hard to produce and feed this country, which they did very successfully. But since the late 60s, early 70s, agriculture has been in a slow decline, and home production has been dropping off.
Yeah, it's sad. And I suppose where there's a stressed sector, you end up having poorer quality, and that has loads of implications, doesn't it, on health and everything else. Yeah. David, we have to leave it there. You talk a lot of sense. We always love having you on the programme. Come back again soon. Thank you ever so much.
Will do. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
You have to say, Isabel, that food sovereignty, being self-sufficient, supporting British farmers, buying British should be a central pillar, I think, of any government strategy.
And ensuring quality as a result. To hear that the pig sector has gone down 30% in the last 3 years, if you carry on at that rate, where will we be?
And the supermarkets driving margins down all the time. People like David feeling the pinch, but thanks for what you do.
Absolutely. Right, the time is 6:20. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
And former Prime Minister Liz Truss has urged Rishi Sunak to brand China a threat to UK security. In a visit to Taiwan, Ms Truss called on the PM not to back down after he described China as a long-term threat to Britain last summer.
2 poultry workers in England have tested positive for bird flu, although there are no signs of human-to-human transmission. Both cases are believed to be linked to the same farm, and the UK Health Security Agency has now launched an investigation.
And the government has extended the £2 bus fare cap for a second time. They say it's to ensure bus travel remains accessible and affordable for everyone. The cap will remain for bus services outside London until October the 31st.
And Johnny Depp has made a return to the red carpet on the opening day of the Cannes Film Festival. The Hollywood actor stars as King Louis XV in Jean du Barry. It's his first major on-screen appearance since his high-profile defamation case with his ex-wife, Amber Heard. A little bit later on in the programme, we have our reporters out and about in what is deemed to be the happiest place and the saddest place in the UK. We won't reveal what they are just yet, but I'm interested to know, have you got places that you associate with being really happy, places that you think of as not being great?
Yeah, 100%. So I was in Nottingham at the weekend, which was my home city. I was with my dad. Hello, Bob. I know you're watching. Love you.
Hello, Bob.
And I just love it every time I go back, especially at the moment because Nottingham Forest might avoid relegation. So it's a real feel-good place at the moment. But I must say, my spirits always drop when I come back to London.
Really?
Yeah.
There could be something in that. I'm not saying anything, but you might not be alone in that sentiment. For me, it's the places I holidayed as a child. So for me, it's the Highlands of Scotland.
Beautiful.
And Devon. I absolutely love both of those places. And whenever I'm away or, whenever I'm homesick, I don't crave London.
You're a country girl
I
at home.
crave those places where I was happy, as a child. So let us know your favourite places, your happiest places in the UK, and indeed where you feel the least happy. And we will reveal all a little bit later on.
Yeah, something which might make you not that happy. Stay with us as we discuss why Prince Harry is being criticised for demanding Metropolitan Police officers in his latest High Court battle.
There's so many of them.
That's right.
That's next, yeah.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the programme. It's 6:25, still to come on the programme this morning.
Yeah, at 7:20, as Martha Stewart becomes the oldest ever Sports Illustrated swimsuit cover model, we'll ask whether you can be too old to flaunt what you've got.
Yeah, and Martin's got a few opinions on that, having been at a magazine for Loaded many, many years. Or was it FHM, or both?
I was on both, and I've seen more than my fair share of cover stars, very close up, and yeah, I've got a lot to say about this.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Yeah. We look forward to it. And then at 7:45, we're marking Mental Health Awareness Week and speaking to Olympian and personal trainer Sarah Lindsay. She's going to give us some tips on how she handles anxiety and pressure. We all need a bit of that.
Indeed.
Not pressure, tips.
So, of course, get in touch all the usual ways. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews.
Right, it's hard to keep up with Prince Harry and his court cases. There's so many going on concurrently. But in this particular case against the Home Office, Prince Harry has been told that police officers are not for hire as private bodyguards as the security row continues.
Yeah, the Duke offered to pay for protection from the armed squad. When he's in the UK, he took the Home Office to court after the proposal was rejected.
Well, joining us now is Royal and Showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield. Are you keeping up, Kinsey? Because it's tough, isn't it?
6. I mean, from the last I counted, it was 6 court cases. But, you know, yesterday he had 2 going on at the exact same time. Matthew Butt, Casey, he was a spokesperson for the Met, told the judge it is wrong for a policing body to place officers in harm's way upon payment of a fee by a private individual. And they are arguing that you or I could not do the same thing, and it would be unfair to allow Prince Harry this privilege. Now, Prince Harry's going to continue to fight this. As you've said before, he's extremely litigious, and only time will tell. We're going to have to sit back and watch, but he really is going, you know, face to face with these issues. He aggressively feels like he's owed protection, and honestly, Isabel, there are some people out there that feel like he's owed that protection too, because he was born into this role and he can't control it.
Well, heck, when he does give away the number of people in the Taliban that he's killed, he probably has made himself bit of a target.
Yeah, it's made the front page of the Sun here today, Kinsey. We're not guns for hire, Harry. And they've got a fair point here, because surely what they're saying is effectively if the Met give their best guys to Harry, then it leaves the public at risk. Why should the general public be at risk from things like terrorist attacks? Because Harry wants the top brass. It's yet more royal entitlement, isn't it?
That's right. You know, the diverting resources is exactly one of the arguments they made. They said that this could put other people, normal citizens, in jeopardy, and that's just not fair. You know, I think another thing that we should remind the public of, though, is that when Harry comes, he's typically coming to do something royal related. And whenever he does come to do anything royal related or you know, as a public figure to represent the country, he does have that protection. So, you know, it's a hard argument, and it's kind of hard to break down all of the pieces, but typically Harry is protected. He just can't bring his own people into the country that are armed, and he can't hire police officers that are armed, or he can't hire special security guards. So we'll have to see how this all unfolds. But, you know, it is interesting to me that he's fighting so hard to have a place in this country that he rarely sees lately. He does not spend a significant amount of time there anymore.
No, and indeed seen last night on the red carpet with his wife, the Duchess of Sussex, presenting a united front, it could be said, and Meghan Markle there being given an award for feminism.
That's right. This was the Women of Vision Award in New York City. Gloria Steinem is one of her mentors, and she is the one that gave Meghan this award. Meghan's wearing an $800 dress there. I know you guys all care. But
I must say, a Women of Vision Award, she certainly is a vision. She looks absolutely incredible in that gold dress.
I do think, she is looking the best we've seen her lately.
Yes.
So, I do think physically she looks pretty good. But she talked about in her speech, going home, settling in front of the television, watching Jeopardy and eating her TV tray dinner. So she's still in her $1,800 dress, definitely trying to look like the Sizzler salad bar girl, trying to look relatable, even though we knew she went to like the best Catholic schools in Los Angeles, California. So she was well taken care of as a youngster. But I think she would tell you it was a good night. It's strange to me, though, at 41, to watch Gloria Steinem give her an award for this Women of this Lifetime Achievement Award, basically. It felt like it should be happening the other way around. And I know it's Gloria's deal, but I was like, shouldn't Meghan be handing this award to Gloria? This feels a little backwards.
Yeah. OK.
I've got a question for both of you, actually. And as somebody who identifies as a man, isn't a princess the opposite of feminism? I mean, you basically marry into a royal family, you get given everything for free, and you live happily ever after. She could have done it, she hadn't messed up.
Yes, she insisted on being called the Duchess of Sussex. The Duchess of Sussex was the giant title, the giant font above her head as she's called up on the stage. A duchess, which is only a title you inherit through marriage, a marriage to a duke. It's insane. The irony, it kills me.
Well, I still think you can be a princess and be a feminist. I look at the now Queen and all the amazing stuff she does for osteoporosis and domestic abuse, very female-orientated work, and, of course, took up the Princess of Wales. And, she's a wonderful role model for women as a mum, and such sweet comments. She was doing she was out and about yesterday with Dame Kelly Holmes and being asked by youngsters in a Q&A, which always I think they get the best answers, don't they? Children, they did it with Rishi Sunak, whoever it is, and they were asking her about what it's like being a princess, and she said she's still learning on the job, which is just so charming. Kinsey.
That's right. At St. Catherine's School in Bristol, she opened up a little bit, and it's interesting to see her be vulnerable and kind. And just, I hate to compare the two women, but I think what people love about Catherine is how humble she is, how, just delicate and sweet and sincere she is. It felt like Meghan rolled into town, didn't Google the national anthem, didn't know the rules, and was frustrated that things weren't going her way. And then you listen to Catherine say, look, I'm still learning. I'm still learning every single day. And I struggle with public speaking, and, she's vulnerable. And how can you not relate to that and feel at ease with somebody who's so honest? And you're right. She's absolutely kind and sweet in the way she communicates.
Yeah. And, if she continues to be humble and say that every day she's learning, then she will become queen, and she'll be wonderful as queen as well. And, the day we all stop learning is, it's the end of us, isn't it? So listen, Kinsey, thank you for the royal overview this morning. Lots to talk about there, and always lovely to see your face. See you soon.
And I love describing the Princess of Wales as delicate.
Yeah, she is delicate.
What a lovely word.
Yeah, delicate, graceful. Yeah. If she was American, she'd be like a Southern belle, like Kinsey. Yes. They've got the lovely, lovely manners. Yeah. Anyway, stay with us. We're going to be discussing Anne Widdecombe's controversial comments that if you can't afford a cheese sandwich, don't have one. Emily Carver and Christopher Biggins will shed some more light on that next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
So Dubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, The People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
And welcome back. It's 6:36, so let's bring you up to date with all of this morning's front pages now.
Here's the Times. It leads with Sir Keir Starmer's bold vow to build more homes on the green belt.
Very bold indeed. The Express focused on Rishi Sunak's bold message to European judges as he tells them to stop meddling in Britain's illegal migrant plans. The Mirror features former Tory-turned-Reform Party backer Anne Widdecombe as she says no one has the right to cheap food. Good old widows being widows again. And the Mail says working from home fuels the UK's sick note crisis. They've also published a picture of actor Michael Douglas in Cannes being kissed wonderfully by his wife and daughter. And finally, The Sun goes with "We're not guns for hire, Harry," as the Duke of Sussex is blasted for demanding armed Met Police officers. Well, there's plenty to tuck into there, and joining us to go through the papers in more detail this morning is actor and entertainer and British legend Christopher Biggins.
Good
alongside
morning.
Columnist and GB News presenter, the superb Emily
And
Palmer.
legend.
And legend. 2 legends. Top of the morning. Let's start with you, Biggins. My good old friend Anne Widdecombe is being Anne Widdecombe again.
I know. I mean, I love these rich Tories who make these statements. Can't afford a sandwich, hard cheese. Well, it's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And, of course, the Mirror have that wonderful front page. I mean, the hard cheese. It's good. But, you know, we are in a terrible state. And, you know, we shouldn't be saying terrible things about people who can't afford not to eat. I mean, we should be helping them. I think there's far too much horrible things being said about people. And, you know, just help people find some food. I mean, the situation is just ghastly and getting worse.
Emily, what do you make of Anne's comments about if you can't afford cheese, hard cheese?
Well, I mean, obviously it's true, what she said. If you can't afford a cheese sandwich, then you won't have a cheese sandwich. I think technically correct.
Get over it.
But it's not a very nice thing to say. Of course, we have food banks that people are going to in record numbers, if you believe reports, which I don't have any reason not to. And the cost of everything is rising ridiculously. I mean, anyone who's been to the supermarket recently will know. I mean, there is some movement in a positive direction on the real basics, on bread, milk, even cheese maybe, I think, are starting to come down. I just hope the supermarkets will compete with each other rather than raising prices to bring them down too. That is one of the benefits of having supermarkets. Well, so many different supermarkets is that they will compete for customers. So hopefully we are seeing the peak of food prices. But Anne Widdecombe, I mean, I think she has fun saying things that sound outrageous.
Anne Widdecombe is obviously incredibly bright and an experienced politician, and she does good little sound bites, but she's not relatable, is she, to the ordinary British
No,
person?
I don't think so. I do respect her, and I do respect people who say what they think, because I think a lot of us are so careful about what we say, censor ourselves all the time for fear of social media. Anne Widdecombe is not on Twitter. I wonder if she would have said such a thing if she were.
Well, she's all over the papers. So
she's all over the papers.
Whether she likes it or not.
That's true.
But some of her friends in politics have said terrible things as well in the paper today. Lee Anderson said, we can make a meal for 30p from scratch. Some can't cook properly.
Yeah, well, he does have a point there, though. I know Lee. I stood against him in Ashfield.
30p Lee.
30p Lee. and what he did, actually...
That was before the inflation, though, he said that, wasn't it?
Be 60p Lee now. But the point is, he was saying the same thing as Jack Monroe, the lefty celebrity chef, but when he said it, it was seen as mean-spirited and you should be able to do it, whereas when people from the left say it, it's like, oh, good on you, let's all learn to cook. So,
well, no, it was because he was a chef, not because he was from the left, no?
No, well, Lee Anderson's not a chef,
No,
but he helps to run a food bank.
No,
Jack Monroe was a chef, but they're saying the same message. But sometimes it's like if you say it from the left, then you're kind-hearted. From the right, you're mean-spirited.
I think a lot of us have. I'm not going to plead poverty right now, but let's say my grandma, when she was a single parent to my mum and 2 other children, she had nothing. But she did cook every day, something from scratch. So I think there is something to be said for that. We're so reliant on expensive meals, aren't we?
As well as being a single
well, she was. Yeah, she was. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that you can't have women. You don't have women at home anymore, and this idea that women are expected, or parents are expected, to cook everything from scratch and work full time and pay for childcare and pay for their rent or their mortgages. And the cost of living, as we know, is at crisis point, and she just is a bit tone deaf there, I think.
Yes, I think we can agree on that.
Biggins, let's go to Oxford University, shall we? Raise the tone a little bit. Bit of a trans row going on. It's the front of the Telegraph.
Goodness me.
I know, this is free speech is at risk in trans row. Oxford Dons tell students. The academics intervene over attempts to block an appearance of university by gender-critical feminists. So what they're saying is, no, this can't happen.
That's nice to see an intervention from the Dons.
I know, but I'd like to know what their sexuality is, these Dons. Methinks they do complain too much. But anyway, this is started because Kathleen Stock, Oxford Union, is a leading feminist, and they don't want her to speak out.
It's astonishing, isn't it, Emily, how these days the trans cult has got to the stage where the 2 crucibles of global excellence, of learning and debate, are now effectively self-censoring women's voices out of this debate.
Yeah, I think it's almost become a badge of honour to be no-platformed or cancelled from one of the top universities. It seems like anyone who's ever said anything remotely controversial seems to get told to leave the campus. But it is good to see Oxbridge standing up for this, because they are, as you say, supposed to be the bastions of free speech. But too often you see the Oxford Union, the Cambridge Union, the debating chambers that have been around for hundreds of years cancelling or no platforming speakers, and particularly it's over this trans stuff. Women who've spoken out about women's spaces or that you can't change sex are being ostracised in a way, but there does seem to be a backlash, and if it's being led by Dons themselves, that's good.
Yes. Yeah. Do you want to go to the Express, Martin? Where should we go?
Yeah, let's go to the Express. We covered this earlier. Sunak talking tough to the Council of Europe. Will they listen?
Yes, he's been very busy, isn't he? I think he's off to Japan, isn't he?
He is.
Today. I don't know if he's arrived yet, but yes, he's been trying to tell the European judges that they should stop meddling in our plans to deport migrants to Rwanda. As we know, it was the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights, that stopped the initial takeoff of the flight to Rwanda and has put a halt to those plans. Whether he will be successful, I don't know. Ian Duncan-Smith has also written in the Express today about how this is essential, how the Rule 39, I think it is,
it is,
needs to be reformed swiftly. I think they've got a point. I wonder if we'd have to remove ourselves entirely, though, from the ECHR if they actually want this policy to go ahead.
I wonder if that's what this is actually about, because appealing to the good nature of the Council of Europe is unlikely to work in the same way appealing to the good nature of Michel Barnier or Guy Verhofstadt didn't work with the European Union. Is this Sunak talking tough, so he looks tough on the front of the Express, so it looks like they're doing something about it, but actually they're not really going to listen to him, are they?
Do you know what? I'm very stressed at the moment, and I imagine a lot of people in this country are very stressed. We're so divided. People will see any battle with the ECHR as either morally wrong and disgusting and disgraceful and anti-immigrant, and others see it as, you know, the only way to take control of our borders. And I don't know if you feel this way at all, but I feel like at the moment we are particularly divided. We cannot agree on anything, not even control of borders, and it's difficult.
It's tiring. What do you think?
It is difficult.
More divided than ever as a nation.
Absolutely more divided. I mean, you know, there's no getting together and trying to work things out. I mean, you know, it's just, I think it's, if they stop battling all these politicians, we would get somewhere, I think. Whereas they just fight with each other.
That's a neat conduit into your next story, because somebody else who isn't getting on with anybody and keeps falling out, 6 times at the High Court, in fact, is a certain a certain Prince Harry. This time he's locking horns with the Met.
Yeah, the front page of the Sun, we're not guns for hire, Harry. What? People do hire guns, don't they?
But not publicly funded ones.
Oh, no, but he doesn't want... He wants to pay for this, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah, probably. Yeah, but he's taking them away from you know, there are coppers, they're not his.
Exactly.
But I mean, pay for them, and we want them to work for us, not for him.
Yeah, but I mean, if he's offering to pay for them, why shouldn't they take
Because then they won't be on the streets policing us.
Yeah, but then...
I can't just buy a police officer.
Yeah, yes, you can.
I can get my own private security guard, but I can't just have one of the Met Police working for me, even if I had enough money.
Yeah, but I think this story is made up here, because I think you know, they want another story to get at him. Poor boy. I mean, I think he wants to pay because he realises that's the situation he's in. He has to pay for these things for security.
Well, now he's named how many Taliban he's killed. There's arguably a bit of a bounty on his head.
I don't understand.
He is under threat.
I don't understand, because he's been to the UK. I mean, more times for court hearings than for his father's coronation, but he's been here lots of times. I mean, he's been looking after him during...
I think his dad certainly paid for his security around the
coronation.
I don't know about with all these
can't he just have private security guards?
Well, exactly.
Isn't the case, though, Biggie, if you choose to kind of lead a life of privacy, not very private, is it? But you by private means, then you should pay for private security. Why should anybody of former royal patronage who is now outside of the flock get to buy the best coppers in the land? That's a 2-tier policing system.
Yeah, but if you've got the money, you might as well do that, though.
What about us? We're like
but then the politicians should pay for us, pay for our policing.
Well, taxpayers pay for that.
The politicians don't have any money. That's us paying for it, Biggin.
Yes.
You and me.
No, but then he's paying, though...
No, but we did get the second-rate ones, and he gets the best ones.
There are no second-rate...
He thinks he's better than you, Christopher.
No,
he thinks
can't
he's better than all of us, and he thinks he deserves everything.
If he hadn't gone around whinging and upsetting all of us, we probably would have... You know, he was our favourite prince when he was growing up, wasn't he? He was the lovable, naughty... cheeky chappy.
When he was falling out of nightclubs.
Well, you know what? There aren't enough people sticking up for him, so you
I'm going to stick in there.
Fair enough. Emily, let's talk about the long-term sick. 2.5 million, and the Mail are saying that this is being prompted by working from home. We haven't got proper seats, and we're not, you know, getting up to go to the water cooler to gossip or flirt, and we're not in back-to-back meetings all day walking around. We're working so hard at home, we're now all off sick.
I think that's not the reason. I really don't think this is the reason. They're saying people working from home now have back and neck pain, so that's contributed to the high numbers of people who are now long-term sick. I mean, maybe for a few people, but I really don't think that's the reason. I think it's more likely that the state of the NHS is to blame. People are on waiting lists. There's probably also a bit of skiving and laziness among these figures. There's also probably people who don't fancy working after being off on furlough for a long time. But I do think probably NHS waiting lists are mostly to blame. I'm not sure people really got... Did people get back and neck pain from working from home?
I would probably suspect not. But look, there are 400,000 more people on long-term sick begins since the pandemic. Coincidence?
I think it's a great shame that people are working from home. I really do, because I think going out to work is very important. I think also the environment of meeting other people in different situations is good. You know, and it's good to have a gossip, good to say what you watched on television that night. You know, I think there's all sorts of things, and getting on with the work.
A change of scene as well. A change is as good as a break.
Absolutely.
You get a bit more depressed.
I do terribly.
In the same room
Also,
day after day.
there's
a lot of merit to that, yeah.
There are so many people who live alone. I think we have record numbers of people living alone. A lot of people are living very solitary lives out there.
But, you know, when you talk about the 400,000 more on long-term sick post-COVID, and you know, no one's talking about long COVID. That is, I mean, we all probably know at least one person who's got some sort of lifelong or seemingly lifelong implication from having this horrible virus, particularly those that got it at the beginning.
Isabel, you've got double the chance of having long COVID if you work in the civil service, apparently.
Oh, well, there you go.
Oh, really?
But yes, it exists. It exists.
Do I technically have long COVID? Look at me, I'm back at work.
Exactly.
Useless nose. Thank you, COVID. Thank you, Wuhan.
But that's because your work ethic overpowers your desire
It's because I have a mortgage. To be paid.
I wonder, Biggins, how much of this is if you feed this sense of, oh, it's OK to be on long-term sick. We had a farmer on earlier who was saying he can't get any labour to help pick his crops. What about some joined-up thinking, getting people on long-term sick to go and pick some spuds?
Absolutely. We're such a lazy country, though. They won't do that.
Hang on a minute. If you're on long-term sick and you've got neck and back problems, bending over and picking cabbages all day, I don't think that's joined-up thinking.
It makes you wonder how we ever got through two world wars.
Get the prisoners out in the field, by all means.
No, it does you the world of good to pick strawberries and raspberries.
Got health problems. I'm not sure physical labour is the answer, would be my answer.
But neck and back pain, if they've been working from home, then these people obviously were never working in construction or anything manual. So, I mean...
The kind of paper lily hands.
They could work from bed instead.
Yeah, pick potatoes from bed.
Maybe I'm being too harsh.
No, there's a thought. I just think that my instinct here is a lot of people are taking the rise.
Of course they are.
I just do think that, because if you allow a culture where people were paid full pay to not work during the pandemic, it catches on. It's, that's quite nice. They get used to the life of luxury.
Here's a statistic for you. 12% of working-age adults are on out-of-work benefits.
It's astonishing.
12%.
That's extraordinary, and it's disproportionately higher in this country than in other European comparative countries.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
And it seems to be a blight of the cappuccino classes.
Right.
I don't know about that.
Emily,
I think it's time to go for a cappuccino.
Biggins, we'll have a coffee break and we'll have more frothy discussion with you just after 7:30.
That was good. I like that.
It's just before 10 to 7. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
And the government will introduce a renters' bill allowing tenants to challenge poor landlords without being evicted. The Housing Secretary says too many renters live in damp, unsafe and cold homes without the power to demand higher standards.
Prime Minister says European leaders must stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes as it continues to fight against Russia's invasion. Rishi Sunak told the Council of Europe summit that the UK may have left the EU, but it hasn't left Europe.
And UK prisons are quite tight at around 99% capacity, a Justice Minister has told Parliament. Lord Bellamy KC told the government he was concerned about an ever-increasing prison population.
The Treasury Committee says cryptocurrency trading should be regulated as gambling due to scams and money laundering concerns. The government says it's taking an agile approach to try and regulate the market. We were just saying that's a really good decision from the government to look at that, because cryptocurrency feels like a bit of a Wild West when it comes to...
Absolutely, and
rogue...
I must confess, I downloaded apps, during lockdown, was dabbling here and there. All of that money basically went, not a lot, like sort of 400 or 500 quid, but poof, it just went. There's no comeback.
Yeah.
A lot of people are treating it like a flutter on the football. There's a lot of money just vanishing into thin air.
It needs tighter regulation for sure. We're going to talk a bit more now about bird flu. We've heard now about 2 cases in humans. They've been detected at an English poultry farm where workers came into contact with infected poultry.
Yeah, and avian flu isn't the only concern for those working in the agricultural sector. A new report shows that dog attacks on farm animals rose to nearly 2 million last year. Our Yorkshire and Humber reporter Anna Riley has this story.
With the rise in reports of dogs causing death or stress to livestock in fields, North Yorkshire Police are campaigning for owners to keep their pets on a lead when walking near to cattle and sheep.
you're out walking your dog, especially in the countryside, please put your dog on a lead. It is that simple. Make sure you've got full control of the dog. This isn't just knowing that, I can call my dog back and it'll come. It has to be on a lead, has to be secure. If your dog gets into a field and starts worrying livestock and you cannot call that dog back, or you're not present, the farmer can and will shoot the dog to protect its livestock.
Livestock worrying is a crime with a £1,000 maximum fine, and it's an offence that hits farmers not just financially, but also emotionally.
The financial burden came to nearly £2 million in 2022 for the cost of livestock worrying. This is something which we simply can't afford. But actually, the impact on the farmer is huge. Farmers are already stressed and have big financial constraints, big input costs, and to have this extra burden on them causes sleepless nights, worry, and actually just tops up all the other challenges that they're facing already.
It's devastating for farmers to discover their sheep dead or attacked, and as livestock worrying is rarely reported by dog owners, the farmer often has no legal recourse.
I went to one farmer who had about 20 young lambs that had been worried across a field, and they'd gone into one fence and then bounced off the other fence, and a lot of them had been strangulated and a lot of them had just passed from pure exhaustion. Because there was no sign of a dog attack, it was even more frustrating because they'd literally been run until they were tired and they just died on the floor. So it was like a horror film when we saw them because they were all just laid out.
The UK sheep sector is at risk of being permanently forced to live with dog attacks, according to the National Sheep Association. Their 2023 survey of 305 sheep farmers showed 70% had experienced a sheep worrying attack in the last 12 months, with 95% suffering up to 10 cases per year.
A lot of farmers just think now they're becoming resigned to it and they think that it's becoming the norm. And they're having to accept it. And it's even leading to fewer reports being made to the police because they're not sure they can do anything about it. The Kept Animals Bill is proposing to increase improve raised police powers to go in and seize dogs and to take DNA samples and things like that. That's very, very welcome.
So the message from police and farmers this summer is to keep dogs on a lead whilst enjoying what the countryside has to offer. Anna Riley, GB News.
Coming up, we're going to have more for you on the government's new plan to support renters. First is your forecast.
Yeah, but first, Greg Dewhurst has your Wednesday forecast.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to our latest GB News weather forecast. The day ahead looking fine and dry for many of us. We will see a little bit of rain across northern Scotland. In the sunshine, not feeling too bad. And through the rest of the week, high pressure generally holds on, keeping it largely dry, particularly England and Wales. Weak weather fronts will sweep in at times, but only light and patchy rain. Perhaps 1 or 2 heavier showers developing by Friday. This morning, a bit of a chilly start, but the day ahead there'll be plenty of sunny spells. The thicker cloud coming and going at times, particularly in the east, and perhaps 1 or 2 showers as we move through into the afternoon. But most places staying dry and bright with some sunny spells, though thicker cloud will move in through the afternoon across northern parts of Scotland to give some patchy rain here. Just like the last few days, temperatures mid to high teens, 18, 19 Celsius, so in that sunshine and with light winds, it won't feel too bad at all. Through this evening, we'll see the cloud melt away. Any showers across England will disappear. Still some patchy rain across northern and eastern Scotland. Some light rain and drizzle over the hills, some hill fog possible. But otherwise, largely dry as we head into the end of Wednesday night and Thursday morning. But under any clear spells, temperatures just about dipping into single figures. So it means a fresh start to the day on Thursday, but a bright start, some sunny spells around. Just notice though, as we head through the morning and into the afternoon, thicker cloud starts to move into parts of Northern Ireland, northwest Scotland, some light rain and drizzle here. But for many, a fine day. Just again, the risk of a few showers developing over southern and eastern parts of England, perhaps the odd sharp one possible, but a beautiful feeling day for everyone. Temperatures mid to high teens, 18, 19, possibly locally 20 degrees, and the warm weather continues as we end the week into the weekend. Still the risk of a few showers, 1 or 2 heavy on Friday, but the weekend looking largely fine, just some rain in the far north and temperatures on the positive side.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The government moves to ban no-fault evictions as it launches a new crackdown on rogue landlords.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. It is 7 o'clock on Wednesday, the 17th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel, Webster and Martin Daubney.
It's great to be here. And here's what's leading the news this morning. The government is today launching new measures to protect tenants with a pledge to tackle injustice in the private rental sector. The plans include a banning of Section 21, which allows landlords to evict tenants without reason.
It comes as Sir Keir Starmer vows to make Labour the party of house building with a pledge to build more homes on the green belt.
And the Prime Minister will fly to Japan today, where he will unveil a new defence and technology pact with the country. On the trip, he will also join allies, including US President Joe Biden, where he will attempt to galvanise further support for Ukraine.
And the Princess of Wales has admitted she never expected to become a royal before she fell in love with Prince William. Speaking at an event alongside Dame Kelly Holmes, she added she's still learning every day how to be a princess. And she's doing a great job.
That story has got you quite hooked, hasn't it?
I just love her. I think she's doing a great job, but I think that humility is the key to why she's so popular.
And that's quite unlike the other one. Anyway, we want to hear from you this morning. You can email us, of course, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or, of course, tweet us @gbnews.
So our top story this morning, the government is moving to ban no-fault evictions as part of a set of major new reforms to the rental sector.
Under a bill being tabled today, landlords will no longer be able to evict tenants without reason, but they will be handed more powers to remove antisocial ones.
Well, the Housing and Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove said the change would tackle the injustice in the private sector and create a quality, affordable and fair housing system.
And it comes as Keir Starmer today vows to make Labour the party of house building with a pledge to build homes on the UK's hallowed green belt.
Well, let's speak to our Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, about all of this. Good morning to you, Tom. Look, this is something that the Conservative Party campaigned on, trying to get a grip of the rental sector. It's been described as a once-in-a-generation set of reforms.
That's right, this was a plank of the 2019 general election manifesto for the Conservative Party, cracking down on what they describe as rogue landlords and, of course, removing that right that currently landlords have to evict tenants without having to prove any fault. The Conservatives want to abolish that rule. However, there is a lot of contention, and the reason why it's been years in the making, this renters reform bill, is that there is a huge concern that there is an undersupply of rental homes available right now, and the government is wary about making moves that could reduce the number of landlords in the market, thereby reducing the number of rental homes available. This is a delicate balance to strike, but the government believes that it can chart a middle way through, allowing landlords to evict bad tenants if they prove fault, but not allowing no-fault evictions.
OK, Tom Harwood, thanks very much indeed.
OK, we're also joined by the Chief Executive of the National Residential Landlords Association, Ben Beadle. Ben, so a raft of new announcements in here. What does this mean for tenants? Let's start first with the good news.
Well, I mean, the good news, good morning to you, by the way. I mean, the good news is that I guess there will be greater levels of security for renters. But, you know, I would argue that the concept of no fault, you know, landlords don't go around evicting tenants willy-nilly. We want to keep people in their homes, right? And so I'm really struggling to find why a landlord would wish to evict somebody when there isn't a problem. What the Secretary of State has announced is that he will enhance powers to deal with antisocial behaviour, rent arrears, and make sure there are grounds for repossession when it comes to selling homes and landlords moving back in, or one of their family members moving back in. That seems to me, if that's delivered upon, to be pretty much the status quo, bearing in mind that in 6% of cases, that's when landlords actually ask tenants to move in. So 94% of cases, tenants leave of their own accord.
I suppose the argument, and you say there are those exceptions which, you know, enable the status quo to continue, but I suppose it's trying to redress the issue of trust, I suppose, that has been lost in many cases between the tenant and the landlord. And if this can go some way to re-establishing that, that has to be good in a world where we're just seeing more and more people renting.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what I would say to you there is we do actually have very high levels of satisfaction in the sector. That's borne out time and time again by the English Housing Survey. We have higher satisfaction than that in the social sector. But I accept, you know, there are some issues around the edges. And, you know, there are some stories out there that we would rather were better stories, right? So we understand why the Secretary of State has moved in this way. But it is really important not to throw the baby out with the bathwater on some of this stuff. It can't give rise for antisocial behaviour to flourish. It can't restrict the rights of landlords to get their properties back with a legitimate reason. And it does mean that we need investment in the court service as we move to this new framework.
What do you make of some of the finer detail here? For example, a new clause being brought in to allow people the legal right to have a pet into a rental property. I mean, of course, pets can damage properties, can't they? The Labour Party will go even further and make it a legal right and even allow tenants, if they get in power, to make alterations to properties. Surely here there's a health and safety and just a damaging property implication for landlords.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we have to remember who the ultimate owner is at the end of the day. But I fail to get too excited about pets, to be honest with you. You know, yes, pets can cause damage, but they also bring a lot of benefit as well. And I think the quid pro quo here is simply allowing landlords to be able to offset reasonable damage that occurs, bearing in mind that there will be some properties that aren't suitable for pets. So I'm not too worried about that, as long as you know, landlords do retain the right to say no in reasonable circumstances.
Look, lots of people tend not to have sympathy for landlords in this day and age. However, we are hearing it's increasingly hard to be a landlord, that people are selling up properties in their droves because it's just simply not affordable anymore, or certainly not profitable. Would you say that this enhances that, makes things better for landlords, or worse?
Well, I mean, it is a renters reform bill. There aren't giveaways in here for landlords. We've known this is coming and landlords have been preparing for it. I think what I would say to you is that it does nothing to affect the supply and demand imbalance that we have at the moment. There is obviously a lag between landlords deciding to take action with their portfolio. So I wouldn't want to leave you with the impression that everybody's going to rush out and sell, right? Actually, there's a huge number of issues in the sector, and rental reform is probably fairly low down the pecking order. Taxation, energy changes, mortgage cost, general cost, the actual cost of mortgages actually showing that perhaps you're better off putting your money in a bank rather than investing in the sector. And that's a problem for everybody because we don't have enough rental property to go round. We don't have enough social housing. We're not building new homes. And so we're shuffling the same pack of cards. We need pro-growth measures that encourage landlords to stay and invest in the sector because that's in everybody's interest.
And how much of this, you think, is just political meddling? I think you're right. The real issue here is a lack of housing stock. And, of course, Gove is blaming immigration. Keir Starmer is saying, let's go further and let's build on the green belts. What would you say about that?
Well, whether or not we build on Greenbelt, we should probably explore some other mechanisms first and generally make it a little bit easier to be able to convert commercial property into residential. Either way, we need more of every tenure. So we need more social housing with over 1 million people on social housing waiting lists, and the private rented sector is picking up the slack. We need to stop the rot in the private rented sector and encourage people to come to it and invest. So we need to remove the additional rate stamp duty. We need to reverse punishing tax changes that mean landlords pay their tax on their revenue rather than their profit. And we also need to make sure that we don't vilify the very good landlords out there that are actually bothering to provide homes. Because, as you say, there's lots of things that are conspiring against the sector at the moment, and the anti-landlord rhetoric may well prove to be the final straw that breaks the camel's back.
Really interesting to get your perspective. Ben Beadle is the Chief Executive of the National Residential Landlords Association. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
I just wish they'd get on with it and just build and get some more blooming houses out there. Anyhow, the Prime Minister will fly to Japan today for the G7, where he will unveil a new defence and technology pact with the country.
Yeah, it follows a meeting last night between the Prime Minister and the European Court of Human Rights, in which he urged them to stop meddling in deportation flights from the UK.
And Fraser Myers, Deputy Editor of Spiked, joined us here this morning in the studio. Fraser, first of all, Rishi puffing up his chest to the Council of Europe, saying allow us to deport people to like Rwanda in a fair and transparent manner. Are they going to listen?
No, they've not really been listening to him, it's fair to say. So this is the first Council of Europe meeting that there's been for 15 years. Don't want to confuse people. The Council of Europe is not the same as the European Union.
Yep.
It's not even the same as the European Council, which is part of the European Union. But this is the body that runs that is associated with the Convention of Human Rights and the European Court of Human Rights. So he's been meeting with the head of the European Court of Human Rights, Shifra O'Leary. He wants to have reform to this Article 39. This is the article that's been used to prevent the deportations, those temporary injunctions, pyjama injunctions, as some people have called them, you know, where in the middle of the night or, you know, late at night, some junior clerk says, hang on, no, this has got to stop because someone's lodged an appeal. It's not likely that there's going to be much movement. A lot of the other Europeans are a bit bemused by this. They're there to talk about Ukraine, not about the Channel crisis. They see this as a UK problem, not as a Europe-wide problem. So he's been given pretty short shrift.
So it might not have achieved his ends there, but it might have achieved other ends, perhaps, in trying to sort of quell some of the dissatisfaction at home. Certainly some manoeuvres going on with this NatCon conference, and also another one at the weekend.
Absolutely. I think the signalling is domestic because Rishi Sunak is... I'd say having a lot of bother on the right of his party. You had Suella Braverman at the NatCon conference this week. Essentially staking a pitch for the leadership, perhaps not to take over now, but maybe when the Tories lose the next election. We also had a conference last weekend, which was essentially the Bring Back Boris conference in all but name, the Conservative Democratic organisation. Clearly, there's a lot of people on the right of the party in particular who are unsatisfied with the way the government is operating. They want things like tax cuts. They don't think that they're taking advantage of Brexit. You know, the U-turn over the reformed EU law bill has been a big issue for them in particular. And often they've been fairly suspicious of Rishi from the start, seeing him as not their man, seeing him as a bit of a technocrat. You know, not someone who can embody the sort of populist energy that gave the Tories the majority in 2019.
But we're due new figures out on May the 25th. Fraser, you've probably seen them. We're looking at a net 1 million migration to the UK. So this tough talk is needed about controlling the numbers coming in. But is it just yet more tough talk? Or are they actually going to do anything? Irrespective of who's in control of the party, can they stop this problem, or are they facing electoral wipeout?
Well, it's interesting, yeah, that, you know, the numbers are pretty extraordinary. You know, post-Brexit, a lot of people... The Tories have been promising to get immigration down to the tens of thousands since 2010, right? So that's obviously a pledge
fair?
that...
Not to nitpick, but I mean, David Cameron famously made that pledge, but no one's really renewed it since him. I mean,
No,
they
that's
said they
true.
want to bring
And
it down,
actually-
but they've avoided, and constantly we as journalists are trying to pin them to a number. It was only him that fell for it.
That's true, actually. And you know, Boris Johnson avoided making that pledge. I think, you know, for a lot of people, what matters most is having a sense of control over the immigration system. Is it, you know, can you really pin a number on what the right level of immigration is? You know, it matters that certain jobs and posts are being fulfilled. People do want to see high-skilled immigration. People have no problem with that. But obviously there is a sense... I think the bigger problem is less for, the legal migration figures than the crisis on the Channel and the boats, because that's a very visible problem. It's a very serious humanitarian problem
It's also
as well.
a tiny proportion of the problem.
It's a tiny proportion of the people coming in, but it gives a sense of disorder, of lawlessness, whereas people coming in legally is actually easier to manage.
And briefly, on the G7 in Japan, is anything of consequence going to come out of this, or is it just another kind of global shindig, a get-together, a bit like COP27, the United Nations going to be there, WHO, Joe Biden? Is anything going to come out of it?
Well, usually I would say that, and these things tend to be sort of talking shops, and they agree to more cooperation in X, Y, Z, and then you sort of forget about it for the next year. But with the war in Ukraine is at a particularly, I would say, consequential point. We're waiting for this Ukrainian counter-offensive. That could prove decisive in the war, and if Zelensky is saying he still needs more weapons to get on with it, so that could potentially be quite significant.
So it could be Rishi Sunak going to Japan to give away yet more British money to the Ukraine.
Well, and persuade others to give their money.
OK.
Fraser, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.
Right, the time's 7:16. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
And former Prime Minister Liz Truss has urged Rishi Sunak to brand China a threat to UK security. In a visit to Taiwan, Ms Truss called on the Prime Minister to not back down after he described China as a long-term threat to Britain last summer.
2 poultry workers in England have tested positive for bird flu, although there are no signs of human-to-human transmission. Both cases are believed to be linked to the same farm. The UK Health Security Agency has launched an investigation.
And Johnny Depp has made his return to the red carpet on the opening day of the Cannes Film Festival. The Hollywood actor stars as King Louis XV in Jean de Barry. I can't say that as well as Isabel can. It's his first major on-screen appearance since his high-profile defamation case with his ex-wife Amber Heard.
Me out last time I read it because Barry is not really a French. It's Barry, isn't it?
No,
but it's not a very French word.
Jean de Barry. You nailed it.
Anyway, we're talking this morning about happy places. A little bit later on in the programme, we've got our reporters going to the place that's been found to be the happiest and the least happy. But it's prompted the conversation in the newsroom and between us about our favourite and least favourite places. And you've been coming back to us with some of your suggestions. So Robert is with me. He says, my happy place is also Devon. My grandparents lived in Plymouth, which is beautiful. She would take me shopping down at the Barbican for some fresh fish that we would later eat for lunch or supper. Her love was what made Plymouth so special.
And Simon's got one here, which may go against the findings that we know the results of. He says, my happy place is in Stowe, in Devon.
Devon's getting a lot of love. This is making me happy.
A lot of love. But my unhappy place is Birmingham.
Oh, interesting. Dean says, least happy place is London. The road's a nightmare. The underground smells like West Ham's changing room. You might not be surprised by the findings of this survey a little bit later on. Fred says, I'm born, bred and still living in the Field, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, area of Lancashire. 75 years now. That must mean he hasn't said he loves it, but one presumes if he stayed that long, it's a good place to be. And Phil says, this is my favourite, my happy place is at home in our garden with my wife, Carol.
Lovely.
Isn't that sweet?
Yeah, but all I can think about now is how the hell do you know what the West Ham changing room smells like?
Well, I think it's an educated guess.
Yeah.
Stinky.
Fair
Keep
enough.
those coming in. We're really enjoying that. You were saying your happy place, Nottingham, also football related, because Nottingham Forest is doing well at the moment, but obviously you're born and raised.
Born and bred there
Morning,
with my dad, Bob High, at the weekend. Had a fantastic time around the pubs around central Nottingham. Moody's High, hoping Forest avoid the drop.
Least favourite?
Well, as I said, I've been in London 28 years. I love it. It's given me my career. Both my children were born here. Fantastic.
Good.
But I must confess, when I come back now, my heart does sink a bit.
Yeah, same. I think it's just the sort of lack of space when you come back, sort of cheek by jowl. That being said, we've disappeared. We're back. That being said, I'm also going to fly the flag for London. If there is a lot of London bashing, you know, it is my home, and there is a lot to love. All the amazing museums and the nightlife and the restaurants and just all the excitement, the buzz, everything that you get from being in the capital city. I love it.
But it's undeniably changed, and many would argue not for the better. Anyway,
let us know
what
your
think.
favourites. And also, after the break, we'll be talking about Martha Stewart. You've got lots of views on this. She's taken her kit off at the age... Oh, what age is she now?
81.
81. There she is, looking absolutely amazing. But we're asking, is it ever too old, too late in life to be taking your kit off? That's next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back at 7:23. Still to come on today's programme.
At 7:45, as Mental Health Awareness Week continues, we'll ask a former Olympic speed skater how she deals with pressure and anxiety.
At 8:10, we'll be speaking to the government. We'll be talking about their rental reforms. Do they go far enough? And we'll also be asking them if it can actually substitute for the building of more houses.
And you can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews at gbnews.uk or, of course, tweet us at gbnews. Now, here's a debate sure to get your juices flowing. Martha Stewart has become the... That came out wrong, didn't it? Has become the oldest Sports Illustrated swimsuit cover model at the grand old age of 81.
Yes, the TV personality and cook is one of 4 cover models this year, which aims to celebrate strong women who live in a world where they feel no limitations. But we're asking this morning, is there an age where you should frankly put it away?
Well, showbiz reporter Eddie Phillips thinks women should flaunt it regardless of age. Meanwhile, social behaviour expert and etiquette expert Liz Brewer believes women should get old gracefully. So, Ellie, let's start with you. So, 81, why not? If you've got it, flaunt it.
Exactly. Do you know, I was looking at this yesterday and I thought, I really hope that when I'm that age, I have that confidence. I feel that good about myself, that I'm happy to go on such a huge magazine, you know, flaunt it, get it out, look so incredible doing it. And I also hope that, you know, my mum, my mother-in-law, when they get to those ages, that they feel the exact same. And I think, why should women hide what they've got? I mean, they're just bodies. Who is it really offending? And if you're offended by it, then I think that says more about you than the women themselves. I think more power to them. I'm so glad that you feel happy and confident. I don't think sexiness ever stops. And I just, I'm more power to them, and I absolutely love to see it.
Liz?
Liz, me?
Yes, what do you think?
I totally agree with you. However, there is a fine line between being elegant, have sex appeal, which Martha most definitely has, and she does look great on that front cover, and vulgarity. And my whole thing is, people are saying, well, what age? Well, age is irrelevant. You know, I grew up thinking 40, life begins at 40. When I got to 40, I thought, oh my God, this is so terrible. This is dreadful. Now, I reckon 80 is the new 60. I also think 60 is the new 40. You know, it's all to do with comfort and confidence. Martha is successful. She's had a few ups and downs, but she's successful. She's a confident woman. She has every right to dress as she feels comfortable and looking good. When I talk about sex appeal and vulgarity, sex appeal is due to a look. It's due to your aura, the kind of vibes you put out, your energy. It's not to do with just showing flesh. Now, my argument is with some people, they just show too much. They think that's sexy, they think that's appealing, and it's not. And
yeah, but that's your opinion, though. Yeah, that's your opinion, and I think, do you know what? That's absolutely fine. But I think who are we, or who are you, or who is anyone to say what is too much, what is too little, what you can and can't show? I think if a woman feels comfortable enough in their body to show as much as it if they want to, then why shouldn't they?
Well,
and you might not think that's sexy, but other people might.
That's exactly what I've said. If you're comfortable and you're confident, and you reach a certain age and you're an independent woman and you're successful, it's not that you make up the rules. You do what you feel is correct. You do what you feel is right for yourself. You have choices in life. What I object to is vulgarity.
Yeah. Well, look, here's what I want to know, and I don't know if we can get that picture up again of Martha Stewart, but my question is, there's a time when a picture of an 81-year-old on a predominantly male magazine wouldn't have sold pictures. My question is this Martha Stewart in her genuine state, or has she been airbrushed so that she looks unrealistically 81, perhaps unobtainably 81, to try and boost sales? And Martin, I mean, you've probably got more of an insight into this than me.
Yeah.
You worked for years in lads' mags.
Yeah, I've put out hundreds of magazine covers of scantily clad women for my sins. It was a terrible job. It was one of the highlights of my life. I can tell you this much for free. She has had a lot of post-photo work, photoshopped to death. The skin tone isn't a real skin tone. And here's another problem I got with this, nothing to do with her age. Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition used to be the NFL Super Bowl final of men's magazines. Pammy Anderson, Cindy Crawford, Elle Macpherson.
Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, Kim Kardashian. It was the most revered and venerated magazine cover in all of men's magazines. Now it's been captured by this wokeism. It's not a target market cover star at all. This isn't a men's magazine cover. It's virtue signalling. It's designed to get the brand talked about. And I just wish that we get back to making magazine for men with cover stars that men want.
I've got to say there, though, I don't know that it necessarily is virtual signaling or woke, because at the end of the day, we're all living older. So, why shouldn't we celebrate women that look fabulous who are older? I get your point about things being airbrushed. I totally get that. And I think that's almost a slightly separate thing. The fact that she is her age and she's on this cover, I think is just a really powerful thing. And it's not like for men or women, you suddenly turn 60, 70, 80 and you go into some box somewhere and you can't be sexy and you can't find people sexy. Maybe they're like, actually, should we broaden our audience because there are older men who want to see women that age?
Yeah, and I suppose the proof will be in the pudding, won't it, Liz, whether or not the sales are any good for an 81-year-old woman. But is it woke to want to celebrate women in all their beauty at 81?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Women at every age have a certain beauty, and that's gained from confidence and actually being informed. I mean, you are what you create in yourself in life, and you are, what you read, the life you have, what you've achieved, all that goes towards creating your personality.
I agree with all of that. My point is this is a men's magazine for red-blooded men, or at least it used to be. And the last few years, we've had a whole caravan of plus-sized girls on the cover, and they've been absolute commercial suicide. They've totally flopped because the target market aren't interested in body positivity and 81-year-old women. The target market, I'm not saying they shouldn't be allowed to be on magazine covers, but why this magazine cover? There's plenty of other magazines that this could be done on the front of. That's my point.
Martin doesn't fancy Martha. That's what it boils down to.
I think she does great.
So Martin,
but
you don't like seeing real women on a magazine. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that.
You prefer to see them airbrushed and looking good and sexy?
I'm saying, for example, would we see an 81-year-old bloke on the cover of Elle? Of course we wouldn't.
It depends.
It would never happen. And so what I'm saying is a men's magazine that used to be for red-blooded men has been captured by virtue signalling to get the brand talked about.
But you know what, Martin, sorry, and we'll come back to Ellie. I mean, I can see you're jumping in. I just want to make one point. I mean, the sort of women that you put on your magazine back in the day, dare I say, probably weren't... I mean, yes, they're certainly appealing to red-blooded men, but they're probably inflated boobs, liposuction thighs and bums.
No.
Not real women. Hair extensions, false nails, the porn star look.
No.
We need to move on from that, because otherwise 50% of the population feel totally and utterly meaningless and useless.
I'll let Ellie talk.
Go on, Ellie.
And also, I've got to say that when you say that the magazine covers are kind of like what the men want, but actually I think there is a conversation to be had about what you're being shown is what you learn to want. So it's kind of like if we show an alternative and you show these women, whether it is, you know, larger women, older women, whatever that could be, not this porn star norm, then actually are we teaching young men and red-blooded males like it's okay to want to be attracted to normal women of all shapes and sizes and, you know, every walk of life. And I think actually those magazines are a lot more powerful than you think. And so it's yeah, I think that's an interesting way to look at it. And actually that's why this is important.
And a final word from you, Liz Brewer, and then we have to wrap it up.
Well, my final word is I think women at any age, if they feel they're attractive and if they have the personality, the confidence and are comfortable, then let it show.
There we go. On that note, let us know your thoughts at home. We say thank you very much to Ellie Phillips and Liz Brewer. Indeed to you for your thoughts as well. Brave to be surrounded by 3 women.
Yeah, well,
Some of those.
I'm sure I'll take it in the day. But that's what I'm here for, God damn it, Isabel.
Oh, steady on. We're going to take a little pause. After that, we'll be talking about Keir Starmer and his bold plans, but his are in relation to house building.
Yeah, and we'll hear from Emily Carver and Christopher Biggins as we take you through today's newspapers, and that's coming up right after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 7:37. We had some great fun today. It's time to bring you up to date now with all the morning's front pages.
Here's the Times. It's leading with Sir Keir Starmer's vow to allow more homes on the green belt. A bold move from him. He's revealing that he wants to relax planning restrictions.
Let's see how that goes down with the NIMBYs. The Express focuses on Rishi Sunak's message to European judges as he tells them to stop meddling in Britain's illegal migrant plans.
The Mirror features the former Tory-turned-Reform Party backer Anne Widdecombe, as she says no one has the right to cheap food.
Widows being widows once again, and the Mail says working from home fuels the UK's sick note crisis. They've also published a picture of actor Michael Douglas in Cannes being kissed wonderfully there by his wife and daughter at the Cannes Film Festival.
Excuse me, I was about to speak then and I started coughing. And finally, The Sun goes with the We're Not Guns for Hire story. They are saying the Duke of Sussex has been blasted for demanding armed Met police officers.
And joining us to go through the papers now in more detail this morning is actor, entertainer and all-round legend Christopher Biggins, alongside columnist, GBNews presenter and also all-round legend Emily Carver. Top of the morning to both of you. Biggins, of course, we must start with you, darling. So you're covering here the story on the front of the pastry of the Times. Johnny Depp is back. A controversial return after that huge court case with Amber Heard.
Exactly. Well, it's the 76 Cannes Film Festival, and he's top of the list of celebrities going there. And they're saying it's a festival for rapists.
Gosh.
Which is a bit unfair, I think, after that court case. But, I mean, that's, you know, they're bound to go for something like that. He's fodder. And his film, which is Jean de Barry, is not had the best reviews. But he looks terrible in it, actually, I must say. There's a picture of him here. And I won't be rushing to see it, I don't think. It won't be on my top list. No. But it's interesting, the Cannes Film Festival. I'd rather like to go, actually, one year. It sounds very glamorous.
You, Biggins.
Yeah, we'll go together. It'd be great. And it's wonderful. I mean, you know, to see Michael Douglas... I was in a restaurant years and years ago in Los Angeles with Joan Collins, he says name-dropping, and suddenly Spartacus came across the room and sat down and chatted to us, Michael Douglas' father. And it was so exciting. I mean, my goodness, you couldn't believe. That city is amazing for star spotting. It's wonderful.
Kirk Douglas, an absolute...
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
Can I just go to you, Biggins, about a story we just covered earlier about how old is it? How old is too old to get your kids off? I don't mean you. I mean, I know it's breakfast, but you mentioned Joan Collins there, somebody who was wonderfully sort of gorgeous, beautiful, but also had that kind of self-restraint. What's your take on? Are you ever too old to be on magazine? Peeling your clothes off at 81.
Yeah, I think it's a little odd, especially... it depends on what magazine, and I think she's got the wrong magazine there, Martha. I think it's... but it's if you've got a good body... I mean, there's also lots of pictures today of Madonna naked, and she's certainly got a great figure. I mean, I think you've got a great figure and you look good and you want to portray that, then that's fine to do it. It's when you don't have such a great figure, I think, you know.
Exactly, it's not age-specific. There's plenty of 20-year-olds from Towie or whatever it is that shouldn't be bearing all...
No, absolutely.
But I can accuse you all of, you know, body-shaming, fat-shaming, fat-phobia...
Yeah.
Fat-phobic, Christopher.
But I would have loved... No, I would have loved to have been painted by... who was the painter artist now? I'm going to forget his name. Who painted everyone hugely fat.
Bacon?
No.
Freud. Yeah.
Now, I met him in a restaurant many years ago in London, and I always used to smile at him, because if anyone went over and said, hello, I love your art, he would throw a bread roll at them. But I would wish... He came up one day and asked me how I was, and I wish I'd said, would you paint me? Because I would love to have been painted by him. I would have certainly taken all my kit off for him.
There we go.
You heard it here first, over breakfast. Emily.
Lovely.
Turn to you. Something else that might put people off their breakfast is Keir Starmer's plan to whack a load of houses on the Greenbelt.
Yes, the race for the next election is very much heating up, isn't it? Yeah. Starmer's revealing all sorts of different policies. We had all the stuff about the labour market, about working from home, a legal right and all this. Now he's talking about house building. And he's adopting some of Liz Truss's policies, the sort of supply-side reform, making it easier for building developments, relaxing planning restrictions. relaxing restrictions when it comes to the green belt. Other people have commented that the green belt isn't always green and pleasant land. Some of it could have housing on it and should have housing on it. I think it's difficult. I think a lot of Conservatives are frustrated with the levels of migration, putting a lot of pressure on housing. Then they have to build up areas that people don't necessarily want to be built up. But I think this is becoming a necessity on both sides, Labour, Conservative, whatever. We need more housing. The Conservatives have rolled back on their housing targets. God knows why. Michael Gove, I don't know why they made that decision. Problem is, it's contentious locally.
They didn't get it past the backbenchers, and that was because of the NIMBYism that exists, whether we like it or not. People don't want their green and pleasant neighbouring fields to be turned into
which is fair enough.
Housing estates. It's funny, it just is a sign of the times, you know, to mention that you would want to build on Greenbelt once upon a time would have been electoral suicide. But last hour we spoke to somebody from the Residential Landlord Association. Actually, he wasn't in favour of it, despite wanting to see more houses being built. He said that should be a last resort to build on the Greenbelt. And actually, there's a huge problem with commercial properties standing empty. We drive through London in the dead of night to come here most mornings, and I see empty buildings all the time. Why on earth we would be destroying what makes Britain so wonderful and beautiful, our green and pleasant land, before we've explored every other option, seems crazy to me.
I agree, and change the office blocks too, which are empty there. You know, make those into homes.
OK, like that's maybe a couple 100,000 houses. The problem is that we need that every year and more. And England is already the most densely populated country in Europe.
But the birth
it's
rate
all rather
has
frustrating.
gone down. And
but the population hasn't.
We're living longer. Yeah, but the long-term concern is that we're not having enough children. So you match that in with net migration, and you know, hopefully.
But if you've got net migration figures out on May the 25th, looking to tip maybe 1 million, that's a Leeds plus a Nottingham every year. And we simply can't build that amount of houses no matter where we try and build.
But you know, next to breathing, you should be able to have somewhere to live. I mean, you know, I think even if you have one room, kitchen and bathroom, which is what I started out with. You know, I lived above the Phoenix Theatre in Charing Cross Road, and that's all I had. And then you get a little bit more money, you get more. You get another room, and you get 2 rooms.
The problem is now you don't necessarily get more. I mean, for a lot of people my age who are renting, it's just depressing. You're actually going smaller, even though you're earning more.
Yeah,
because the rents are so sky high. And yes, you can say move out of London, but then there's the commuting costs.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you can work from home. It's why a lot of more people are working from home, I think, just because, you know, overall it's cheaper with the commuting costs, etc., etc. Oh dear.
No, it is depressing, and it is going to take bold measures. And it's just interesting the different tackling approaches from both left and right, with Labour saying, right, we'll build on the green belt, and Conservatives saying we're going to try and sort out the rental sector. Fascinating debate. Let's go big into Sarah Vine's column in the Mail today. Actually, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but it's good to talk more about it. Well, no, because, I mean, I know you're quite in with some of the royals, and this is the Queen's loyal dresser being banished from Windsor, from the Windsor estate, because she's a working-class lass from Liverpool.
Well, she's gone, and she's gone up north, not to Liverpool, but I think somewhere up near there. And I think, you know, that's fine. We don't know. That maybe is what she wanted. But I do think there is you know, I remember the Queen Mother had her main page ran the Queen Mother's life. And when she died, he was ousted from the royal family. And yet he'd been so keen in that relationship with the Queen Mother. And all the royal family adored him for that. But there suddenly comes a point where when that person passes away, then they're forgotten. And I think that is awful. And we don't know how true that story is in this, but Sarah Vine is a brilliant journalist, and I'm sure she has written what she thinks is right. And I think if it's true, it's not good news. Because this is, you know, the Queen, she worked for the Queen for quite 30-odd years, I think. And to be banished like that is just terrible. I mean, you know.
It makes you wonder if they're always going on about diversity, we need more people from certain backgrounds, but the working classes, don't seem to be many working class people knocking around the royal family. That's the kind of diversity that we do need.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we do. And, of course, then, you know, I think the Queen's secretary is suddenly given an award rather than banned from his, you know, house. I think he's still living in Windsor. I mean, it's difficult, you know, but to get rid of someone that was so loyal to the Queen, I think is wrong.
Well, listen, we say goodbye to Biggins and Emily Carver for now. More from both of them just after 8:30. Thank you. I know, Emily, you want to talk about ChatGPT. Let's talk about that next hour because I'm really interested in this story.
Excellent.
We'll do that later on. But for now, at 7:47, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
And the government will introduce a renters' bill that will allow tenants to challenge poor landlords without being evicted. The Housing Secretary says too many renters live in damp, unsafe and cold homes without the power to demand higher standards. The reform will also reduce notice periods for renters that act irresponsibly.
The Prime Minister says European leaders must stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes as it continues to fight against Russia's invasion. Rishi Sunak's told the Council of Europe summit that the UK may have left the EU, but it hasn't left Europe. He also called on Russia to be held accountable for all the war crimes.
And the Treasury Committee says cryptocurrency trading should be regulated as gambling due to scams and money laundering concerns. The government says it's taking an agile approach to regulate the crypto market.
Now, it's Mental Health Awareness Week this week, with many people admitting to facing anxieties on a daily basis.
And Olympian and owner of Raw Fitness, Sarah Lindsay, uses exercise to help improve her mental health, and she joins us now to share her top tips. So let's talk about something that I know is true, because I try and exercise. I'm of a certain age now. I go to the gym, I play football, and when you physically exercise, not just a physical boost, so that your brain comes alive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a few sides to it. I think when you're suffering with stress and anxiety and you're, releasing, adrenaline and cortisol and those stress hormones, you can use those to exercise. So you can use that to boost your performance when you train. And then also, off the back of that, the sort of feel-good hormones that you release when you do exercise, that can obviously help lift your mood. And I think as well the emotional side of it as well. What you've achieved something, you've gone in and accomplished something, and I think the reward from that obviously can help pick you up as well.
Sarah, you've overcome lots of pressure to have huge success, but also anxiety. Tell us how you've personally got a grip of that and used it to your advantage, I suppose.
I think so. So I'm really, really lucky that I don't on a daily basis suffer with anxiety, but I think some of that definitely I can contribute exercise to. And I do feel if I don't exercise, then I do feel maybe a little tense. So I think it's trying to do little and often, not sort of building up to this big one workout at the weekend, but, spending, even if it's just 10 minutes a day where you're doing something for yourself. I think it's like the ultimate in self-care, really.
And one of the key points as well is the need for human interactivity. I mean, especially like during the pandemic, so many people got isolated, got alone. And even though you can go to the gym on your own, you meet people. I go to my local gym, and the best session of the week is when the pensioners go.
Yeah.
When the pensioners go in, some of them are on oxygen tanks, obviously not in the best of health, but they're out there, they're doing it, they're chatting, they're having a coffee.
You feel great.
Yeah, I feel, wow, I'm actually fit compared to these people. But the point I'm trying to make is, we need, as humans, to connect. We can't just sit at home and be isolated.
I feel very strongly about that too. I think the sense of community around fitness and exercise, and it's an amazing way to socialise with people and like-minded people and people that are in the same sort of headspace around that sort of thing as you are. It doesn't have to be, just going to the pub, for example.
And Sarah, it doesn't have to cost the earth either, does it? I mean, a lot of people think, I can't afford a gym membership, can't afford a Peloton bike. The weather's gorgeous now, the summer is here.
Yeah.
You would encourage people, I suppose, from a mental health perspective as well, to get out in nature.
Even going for a walk, even just 10 minutes, especially, like you say, in nature, so out in the daylight. It doesn't have to be sunny. It doesn't have to be sun on your skin that has that response, just daylight on your skin. Roll your sleeves up, take your cap off, don't wear sunglasses, take deep breaths, really think about inhaling and exhaling. All those things can contribute positively.
And of course, vitamin D is one of the few vitamins that the human body cannot manufacture. So sun gets a bad press all the time. Oh, the sun's terrible. But being out and about, having a walk, getting a bit of sun on you, it's a natural high.
Of course. And I think you know, being in the sun, sun is life. Of course, it's good for you. You know, being out in the midday sun, sunburning, that's not. But other than that, of course, the sun has a positive impact on your body.
Well, look, really good advice there, Sarah Lindsay. Thank you so much on Mental Health Awareness Week. Lots of people at home, I'm sure, feeling inspired from that. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
We've been getting lots of emails from you throughout the course of the morning on a whole range of topics that we've been talking about. We've been talking about house building. CJ says, here in the south and the southeast, our countryside, our wildlife, our way of life and our quality of life is being destroyed by non-stop house building. And Steve says, I'm a bricklayer by trade and I now teach at my local college. The number of young people coming into construction is getting smaller and smaller. Youngsters simply do not want to do the physical work anymore.
Yeah, and Andy on Keir Starmer's plans to build more houses, he said Labour's plans to build more houses is all fine, but what about the public services? Because, of course, we need more schools, more dentists, more doctors. Otherwise, there's just huge pressure on what's already there. Isabel?
We've also been talking about landlords' rights. Andy in Dorset says, I have a nuisance neighbour and I've spent 3 years trying to sort the problem out. Only when I got my MP involved did things happen. Unfortunately, because he's got mental health issues, it's near impossible to evict him. There are lots of different perspectives here. Andrew in Ealing, on the other hand, he says, I'm a landlord and I have 28 flats, but I'm worried about some of these reforms. I need to look at the small print as I have to protect myself and my tenants. It will be interesting to hear more from Michael Gove.
Yeah, Andrew, only 28 flats. I mean, I'm getting the
Not many of us can relate to that.
Getting the violins out there, mate. This one, I think is this from you, Dad? You're pretending to be Judy, aren't you? And what a pleasure to have Martin Daubney back on Breakfast. Well, thank you very much.
It is a pleasure. It really is.
Great
Good
to
fun.
be back.
Lots of energy. Look, stay with us. Martin and I will have more after this, including more details on the government's plans to end no-fault evictions.
But first, Greg Dewhurst has your Wednesday weather forecast.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to our latest GB News weather forecast. The day ahead looking fine and dry for many of us. We will see a little bit of rain across northern Scotland. In the sunshine, not feeling too bad. And through the rest of the week, high pressure generally holds on, keeping it largely dry, particularly England and Wales. Weak weather fronts will sweep in at times, but only light and patchy rain. Perhaps 1 or 2 heavier showers developing by Friday. This morning, a bit of a chilly start, but the day ahead, there'll be plenty of sunny spells. The thicker cloud coming and going at times, particularly in the east, and perhaps 1 or 2 showers as we move through into the afternoon. But most places staying dry and bright with some sunny spells, though thicker cloud will move in through the afternoon across northern parts of Scotland to give some patchy rain here. Just like the last few days, temperatures mid to high teens, 18, 19 Celsius, so in that sunshine and with light winds, it won't feel too bad at all. Through this evening, we'll see the cloud melt away. Any showers across England will disappear. Still some patchy rain across northern and eastern Scotland. Some light rain and drizzle over the hills. Some hill fog possible. But otherwise, largely dry as we head into the end of Wednesday night and Thursday morning. But under any clear spells, temperatures just about dipping into single figures. So it means a fresh start to the day on Thursday, but a bright start, some sunny spells around. Just notice though, as we head through the morning and into the afternoon, thicker cloud starts to move into parts of Northern Ireland, northwest Scotland, some light rain and drizzle here. But for many, a fine day. Just again, the risk of a few showers developing over southern and eastern parts of England, perhaps the odd sharp one possible, but a beautiful feeling day for everyone. Temperatures mid to high teens, 18, 19, possibly locally 20 degrees, and the warm weather continues as we end the week into the weekend. Still the risk of a few showers, 1 or 2 heavy on Friday, but the weekend looking largely fine, just some rain in the far north and temperatures on the positive side.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The government moves to ban no-fault evictions as it launches a new crackdown on rogue landlords.
Top of the morning, it's 8 o'clock on Wednesday, the 17th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Martin Dawden, myself, and of course, Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The government's today launching new measures to protect tenants with a pledge to tackle injustice in the private sector. The plans include a banning of Section 21, which allows landlords to evict tenants without reason.
Yeah, and it comes as Sir Keir's storm of vows to make Labour the party of house building, with a pledge to build more homes on the hallowed green belt.
The Prime Minister will fly to Japan today, where he'll unveil a new defence and technology pact with the country. On the trip, he'll also join allies, including the US President Joe Biden, where he'll attempt to galvanise further support for Ukraine.
And the Princess of Wales admitted she never expected to become a royal before she fell in love with Prince William. Speaking at an event alongside Dame Kelly Holmes, she added she's still learning every day how to be a princess. Oh.
And it's been a lively morning on the GB News inbox, particularly following that debate about Martha Stewart being a cover girl at the age of 81.
Yeah.
This is from Claire Williamson. I'm a woman and I agree with Martin with an exclamation mark. But Martin Douglas says nothing woke about the cover picture. Martin, get over yourself. So there we go. A split of opinions there. And this one has come in from Sharon Below. She says, good morning. Are these women, and I'm 63 years old, just showing off the surgeon's costly handiwork? A bit like Frankenstein. We've also been talking about happy places. Have you got some of these, Martin? Because these made me chuckle. Marion's with me on this. My favourite place is the beautiful Highlands of Scotland. Couldn't agree more. And in particular, Inverness, which is also my birthplace.
I'm suspecting Brian might be from anywhere but Sunderland, because he says, my happy place is anywhere but Sunderland. It seems that some houses need a facelift. Some houses and gardens are an absolute disgrace. Brian, not a big fan of Sunderland.
And Alban is also after my heart. My happiest place is Somerset. I also adore Somerset, particularly Bristol, and I spent 10 years living there, so I couldn't agree more. Wells, which is stunning cathedral city, and Glastonbury, also cathedral town. No matter how many times I've tried to escape from Bristol, I would end up being brought back there again. My least favourite place is London, and I can't stand being there for even a second. You might not be on your own in that one. Stay tuned for more on that later in the programme.
And to our top story this morning, the government will move to ban no-fault evictions as part of a set of major new reforms to the rental sector.
Under a bill being tabled today, landlords will no longer be able to evict tenants without reason, and they'll be handed more powers to remove antisocial ones.
Housing Secretary Michael Gove said the change would tackle the injustice in the private sector and create a quality, affordable and fair housing system for all.
Well, earlier we spoke to Ben Beadle. He's Chief Executive at the National Residential Landlords Association, and he said while it helps landlords and tenants, he can't see it making an overall difference.
Good morning to you, by the way. I mean, the good news is that I guess there will be greater levels of security for renters. But, you know, I would argue that the concept of no fault, landlords don't go around evicting tenants willy-nilly. We want to keep people in their homes, right? And so I'm really struggling to find why a landlord would wish to evict somebody when there isn't a problem. What the Secretary of State has announced is that he will enhance powers to deal with antisocial behaviour, rent arrears, and make sure there are grounds for repossession when it comes to selling homes and landlords moving back in, or one of their family members moving back in. That seems to me, if that's delivered upon, to be pretty much the status quo, bearing in mind that in 6% of cases, that's when landlords actually ask tenants to move in. So 94% of cases, tenants leave of their own accord.
And our political reporter, Olivia Utley, joins us now in the studio. Olivia, so it seems here that both the big parties are making a big plea for generation rent.
Well, yes. The way that Michael Gove is portraying it is that he's offering, he's making rental life easier for people who rent, but at the same time, he's giving a little sweetener to landlords in that it's going to be easier for them to evict antisocial tenants. There have, however, been quite a lot of questions raised in the Conservative Party, and you notice that the leader in the Telegraph is very, very anti-Michael Gove's plans. And what they say is that actually the pendulum has swung too far in favour of renters, and what they're worried about is that landlords will simply take their homes off the rental market altogether, and we'll end up with there are already 11 million people living in the rental sector. And yes, of course, it would be great if some of those homes went off the market and young people were able to buy them instead, but it seems more likely, given the current state of the buying market and the state of interest rates and how big a deposit needs to be, that some people will just find that they've got nowhere to live at all. And some of these measures, it seems, what the Telegraph argues, which is quite an interesting thought, is that actually the issue is that the private rental market is overcomplicated, and actually adding new laws on top of existing ones might go a bit too far. So I think that this plan won't be sort of welcomed with open arms across the Conservative Party, and it'll be interesting to see what happens as it progresses through the Commons, because we could see a bit of a backbench rebellion from the sort of Trussites in the party, the free marketeers who don't like the idea of the state intervening in that private contract between renters and owners.
Well, the trouble is, for Michael Gove, everything he proposes seems to be met with this kind of response, because he tried to tackle the problem with house building, which is obviously linked to this as well, because it does nothing to tackle the issue with supply of housing, and that got thrown back in his face. And what is being proposed in that regard? Because, you know, we've got Starmer on the front of the Times this morning saying, well, we'll build on the green belt. What are the Tories proposing in terms of supply?
Exactly. Michael Gove said yesterday, I was watching him speak at the National Conservative Conference, and he was saying that we need to build more houses, but he didn't really flesh out that proposal much more. And that we just saw yet again that problem at the heart of the Conservative Party, that on the one side you've got the sort of free marketeers, the Thatcherites, the Trussites of the world, I use that as as sort of shorthand, and not all of these people support Liz Truss, but who believe that we must just build more houses, get the economy growing, give young people places to live, etc. Then on the other side, you've got the sort of small C Conservatives in the shires, or who represent places in the shires, who are very worried about new developments going up and ruining the views of their constituents. So it's a really, really difficult problem. And as you say, it means that Michael Gove is sort of being attacked from both sides, whatever he comes up with.
On the one hand, you could argue that the Greenbelt should be sacred land. On the other hand, this NIMBYism won't solve the fact. We've got figures coming out on the 25th of May, expected as high as 1 million net migration. That's one Leeds and one Nottingham every year. Without building houses, we're heading for a crisis.
Well, exactly. And the Labour Party, I'm sure, will make the point, I've forgotten what the exact statistic is, but something like 60% of Greenbelt land is given over to things like golf courses and car parks. So the idea that it's sort of a beautiful space for residents to enjoy is a bit anachronistic, really. So I think that this is an interesting proposal from Labour, but I think it will be very, very difficult for the Tories to replicate it because of all those NIMBYs in the blue wall. And the Tories know after that local election, they desperately need their heartlands. They can't be complacent on that vote.
Really interesting. Olivia, thank you very much indeed.
OK, so the Chancellor, the Governor of the Bank of England and Sir Keir Starmer will speak today at the British Chamber of Conference's annual conference today.
And our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, joins us from Downing Street with a bit of an overview. Presumably the Prime Minister would be talking to if he wasn't on his way from the Council of Europe meeting in Iceland to the G7 in Japan. But a really important series of speeches expected today. What are we expecting to hear?
Yeah, very good morning, Isabel. You're right in saying the Prime Minister is briefly back at number 10. He hobbled back from Iceland last night, where he was at that Council of Europe meeting. Seemed to make some headway, not least of all with Ursula von der Leyen, the EU Commission President, when it came to greater cooperation with the European agency Frontex in terms of trying to tackle migration, a problem that he argues, the Prime Minister argues, is not just a problem that faces the UK, but indeed all of Europe, and the solution has to be found as well elsewhere in Europe. But you're right, he's then going to go to the G7 in Japan later on today to meet with the most powerful leaders around the world. And that means he's going to miss two key events today. That speech, as you said, the British Chambers of Commerce, the Chancellor making the speech instead, talking about, of course, where we find ourselves with the British economy, clearly still under an awful lot of strain with the cost of living crisis and indeed with increasing interest rates. And the Governor of the Bank of England will be there as well, with the expectation that interest rates will rise at least another notch before the summer in order to bring down inflation. The Prime Minister has pledged, the government has pledged to bring it down to half of what it is by the end of this year. And at the moment, that seems somewhat of a struggle. And in addition to that, we'll hear from Keir Starmer, who's going to talk an awful lot about, as you've guys have just been saying there in the studio, about house building and his preparation to build more homes, again with the consent of local communities, but a sign that he wants Britain to try and deal with its housing crisis. The other big thing, of course, the Prime Minister is missing today is Prime Minister's question time. He will not be in the Commons chamber. That means the deputies will be doing it instead. Isabel Oliver Dowden, the new Deputy Prime Minister, first time he's going to do this, taking on, of course, Angela Rayner, Labour's Deputy Leader. We'll have to see what it's going to be like. I have to say, Oliver Dowden is not necessarily the most fiery of characters, whereas Angela Rayner is, so it could be quite an interesting tussle between the deputies.
Popcorn ready. Darren McCaffrey, thanks very much indeed.
And let's head to Westminster, where we're joined by Transport Minister Richard Holden. Good morning to you, Richard. So first of all, let's talk about these plans for house building, if we can. Seems to be quite a war breaking out here between the NIMBYs in the Tory party and Keir Starmer, who said, let's throw open the Greenbelt.
Well, I'll just say this about Keir Starmer. About 2 weeks ago, he was saying we should never build anything on the Greenbelt. Now he's saying something completely different. This man has flip-flopped, more than times than I've had pints of beer in my local pub, right? He is really not on across any of the detail. He just makes it up as he goes along. He's just like one of those very expensive human rights lawyers who likes to make a different case every time he's got a different jury there. He used to be backing Jeremy Corbyn in his shadow cabinet. Then he was praising Jeremy Corbyn when he got the leadership of the Labour Party and made all those pledges. Now he's dumping all of those. I think we need to take anything that Keir Starmer says with a very big pinch of salt in this space.
OK, well, what about specifically what Michael Gove is proposing? He's already tried to tackle the issue of housing and had a bit of a flop from his backbenchers, nobody wanting it in their backyard. Will he have more success with these rent reforms? It's not being completely embraced by the party, is it?
Well, look, I'd just say over the last 10 years, we've built 2.2 million homes right across the UK. And actually, let's look where Labour are in power here in London. Actually, the highest both house starts and house completions were under that's Conservative Mayor of London. We've seen when Labour are actually in power, they don't actually do what they say they want to do, which is quite clear when you've got Sadiq Khan here in London. But just onto the renters reform areas. Look, I rented a house until I was in my mid-30s. I think sensible changes to say that people should be able to have pets, should be able to have children in their own home, I think is perfectly reasonable. I think getting rid of no-fault evictions is sensible. But I think on the other side, I've also got issues when constituents come to me and say they've got a neighbour who the landlord's finding it really tough to get rid of, who's causing massive antisocial behaviour locally. I think that balance of being able to get rid of the person causing antisocial behaviour, but otherwise people should be able to have the peace and enjoyment of their own home, are really sensible and balanced reforms from Michael today.
OK, so Richard, we saw Rishi Sunak puffing up his chest, talking tough to the Council of Europe on allowing us transparent and effective deportations of illegals. Do you think they'll listen to him?
Oh, well, I think so. I think the Article 39 elements around the Council of Europe. I was actually a member of the Council of Europe as a backbench MP when Russia invaded Ukraine, and actually working together we can get some of these things sorted out. We certainly had a cohesive response then. I'm hoping that they'll listen to us now. But the truth is that the Prime Minister's really trying to deal with some of these big issues, these 5 priorities he's got. One of them is obviously stopping the boats, but another one is around the big issue that I'm involved in at the moment, which is around tackling inflation. One of the things that we're trying to do at the moment in the Department of Transport is keep those costs, particularly for transport users, as low as possible. I've got a lot of low-paid workers in constituencies like mine in North West Durham, and we're trying to get that £2 bus fare there. We've extended it already to the end of June. We're now extending it to the end of October with a £2.50 bus fare all the way through to the back end of next year as well. So we're really looking to screw down on those costs wherever we can. That's on top of also cutting fuel duty by 5 pence a litre. That's a £4.5 billion tax cut for everybody in the country, and for rail commuters, keeping rail price rises significantly below inflation. So we really are trying to help right across the board, and this is something that the Prime Minister has been doing for quite a long time. If you think around that most households will have seen about £1,500 off their energy bills over the winter because of the extra government support we've put in. That's building on the strong work that he did during the pandemic, supporting people with schemes like furlough, supporting businesses. So, you know, I'd say that we're right there concentrating on the issues that matter to the British people despite those global headwinds. And one of those very much around the economy, but others, yes, you're absolutely right to concentrate on us needing to stop the boats and tackle illegal migration as well.
It's interesting how £2 bus fares sounds great, but there's no such thing as a free lunch in politics. £500 million this is going to cost. And isn't there a feeling, Richard, that basically the bankroll of transport comes from the motorist who gets hammered on clean air taxes, gets hammered all across the board on extra fines, on smart motorways that are anything but smart. So isn't this take from the motorist to fund public transport? And why is there such a war on motorists?
Well, I certainly wouldn't say that. One of the big things that we've done over the last few years, as I've said, is that big 5p of fuel duty, a £4.5 billion tax cut, which, yes, does help motorists, but helps everybody because everything has to be shipped by road in the country as well. So it is going to help over time with reducing food inflation as well. And I just say on the buses that what I want, that these things travel on roads as well. They're our most used form of public transport. What I want to see, and they're also used particularly by lower paid workers, older people who've got their free bus passes as well. This is money that we've found from inside the department. Me and the Transport Secretary have been shaking all of the cash we can out of projects which we don't think are necessary and targeting it on cost of living support through this measure, and also on ensuring that bus routes are still there as well. So it's around £200 million for the bus fare cap and £300 million over the next 2 years for support for bus routes right across the country. And when you talk about motorists, what I don't want to see is bus routes go and then more people in their cars causing congestion for motorists either. So I think this can be a win for motorists as well. And we're not putting up any taxes. We're not even to borrow any more money to deal with it.
You could always shake more cash out of your magic transport tree if you were to scrap HS2, but that's a whole nother topic. Just on buses, I mean, look, a lot of people will welcome the freezing of bus fares at £2 until the autumn. We know how hard it is for people at the moment, and as you say, often people on the lowest incomes are using them. But why are you allowing 1 in 7 bus routes to be closed, particularly in rural areas? They're a lifeline. Absolutely, they need to be protected.
No, well, that's what would have happened if we hadn't stepped in with this support, and this is a 2-year support, which is crucial. What I would say is look at the difference between what we're doing in England as the Conservatives, depending compared to what the devolved governments are doing around bus routes in Wales and in Scotland. In Wales, they've not got any of this support there beyond July. They're choosing different priorities, like stopping all road building totally. And we all know buses travel on roads, so this will have a big impact on our bus routes and things like that in Wales as well. In Scotland, they've not put that support in there like we have in England. They're choosing different priorities, probably spunking money up the wall on things like more independence referendums. That's not what we want to see. I want to see this government and the entire country concentrating on the things which matter to people. That's tackling the cost of living, just like we're doing in terms of cutting bus fares, keeping them down for the long term for people, providing cash to support bus routes right across the country, but also helping all transport users with that 5p off fuel duty, and also the keeping rail fares rises below inflation. I think that's the sort of action that people want to see, which is part of why I think when people look again at the Labour Party, who we can see flip-flopping every single week from side to side on all the big issues of the day, what they want to see is somebody with a solid plan to get inflation under control, deliver growth in the economy, keep debt under control, tackle waiting lists, and also, crucially, stop the boats as well. And that's what the Prime Minister's doing, is delivering on those priorities, which are the people's priorities.
OK, Richard, as somebody who was elected in the West Midlands, where HS2 runs through, let me tell you, a lot of Tory councillors voted for my party because we wanted to scrap HS2. £100 billion to simply get people to London 10 minutes sooner. Can we finally admit it's been the biggest waste of money in British transport history?
Look, I think all of these big transport projects always come under a lot of scrutiny. I was up in Skipton recently, where I grew up, and saw that the Leeds-Liverpool Canal took around 60 years to build, 4 times over budget, all that sort of thing, but you wouldn't remove it now. When we're looking at these big capital infrastructure projects, we have to take a very, very long-term view on them, and that's what I'd say around HS2. But what I'm concentrating on as Roads and Buses Minister is trying to provide that immediate support for families right across the country who are facing really tough times at the moment, and that's why the extension of the £2 bus scheme, but also in the longer term looking at how we can maintain as many routes as possible. That's what I'm concentrating on. I want as many measures as possible there to deal with the cost of living that normal people in constituencies like mine, but right across the country, are facing, and that's what my priorities are over the next few years.
Richard Holden, Transport Minister, thanks very much indeed for your time. Interesting to hear from somebody who speaks faster even than me. More words per second, taking my title away from me.
I think that guy can do circular breathing. He'd be a great trumpet player, because he literally can talk and never stop for breath.
Just sort of
quite a skill.
Did the whole Conservative manifesto right there. Let us know your views on everything he had to say this morning. HS2, no false evictions, and everything in between. But with the time at 8:20, we're going to bring you up to date now with the rest of today's top stories.
And former Prime Minister Liz Truss has urged Rishi Sunak to brand China a threat to UK security. In a visit to Taiwan, Ms Truss called on the Prime Minister to not back down after he described China as a long-term threat to Britain last summer.
1 in 5 adults found it difficult to pay bills and credit repayments at the start of the year, according to the Financial Conduct Authority. The number of adults who'd missed bills or loan payments in at least 3 of the previous 6 months have increased by 1.4 million from 4.2.
And the world's largest collection of Banksy artworks is set to go on display in London. The Art of Banksy will feature more than 100 pieces and include the artist's recent work acknowledging the ongoing war in Ukraine. The exhibition will open on Regent Street in July.
Right, stay with us. We'll have all the details of tonight's Champions League semi-final between Manchester City and Real Madrid with Paul Coit next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 8:25. Still to come on today's programme.
At 8:45, we'll be live from the Cannes Film Festival ahead of the premiere of Johnny Depp's
very exotique.
since his high-profile court case.
And a new study's found the happiest and the saddest places in the country. At 9:15, we've sent our reporters to both places to find out the secret to a happy life.
I wonder which reporter gets the bad gig out of those.
We did send our cheeriest reporter to the cheeriest one and our most morose reporter to the saddest one. I'm only joking. They're both good friends of mine. I'm just having a josh. But anyway, send in your favourite places, your happy places as well. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
OK, first now let's take a look through the back pages. And the Mirror looks ahead to tonight's Champions League semi-final as Man City battle it out with Real Madrid. Kyle Walker says the team must win to challenge Manchester United's treble legacy. However, in the Mail, Guardiola's asking fans not to judge him on tonight's performance, but that his legacy will remain intact regardless of the results of the Champions League semi-final. And finally, in the Star, Man City have been told to shake a leg. See what they did there? Meanwhile, Luton overpowers Sunderland in last night's playoffs to snag a chance at promotion from the Championship to the top flight. And now joining us is the legend, broadcaster Paul Coit is here in studio. Let's start with the Championship.
Shall we? Okay.
So Luton Town, a team from my boyhood, were always in the top flight, making a dramatic return they could.
Could well be. And the amazing story is that it's about 30 years since they were last, excuse me, in the top flight. And they've dropped down, and not only did they drop like a stone, then down, and then to the old first division, second, third, they ended up actually playing non-league football. So it'll be the first time that see Wrexham are going to be looking at this. There we go. More about Wrexham. Yeah. But the thing is, Wrexham are looking at this. But Luton have done it. So they've got so far now, right up to the top of the Championship. They're now in the playoffs. So they're in the playoff final where they're going to play. Where they're going to play either Middlesbrough or Coventry, who play tonight, which is all level there. So who knows? I mean, can you imagine Luton being back up there? Kenilworth Road. The iconic, really, tiny little stadium in Luton, and there's 10,000. It's all in the middle of like a housing estate. To have Premier League football there and how football's moved on since they were last in the top flight. But, you know, they're one game away. And
actually, if you look at the exterior of that ground, one of the entrances to the ground goes through a house.
It does, yeah. Actually, you have to go into the bathroom of someone's house actually to get into one of the executive boxes.
And that ground could be an away day for people like Man City fans. Astonishing.
I love that, though. I love that. Yeah. And I mean, we like to hark back to the old days, you know, the old days of football when it's not all run by money and everything's glitzy and glamorous. And I just love the idea of Luton Town being there. You know, I think if Eric Morecambe would be very proud, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. You know, they stand a really good chance because they're really on form. Yeah. They're playing terrific football. When I say terrific football, terrific, that's kind of... People would argue with that. Sunderland, Tony Mowbray was saying, oh, you know, I don't like their style of football. But the thing is, there's space for it. Yeah. You know, if it's a matter of hitting long balls and it's not the most attractive and you've got two big strikers up front, you know, it'd probably scare the life out of some of these Premier League teams. There's more ways to skin a cat.
Yeah,
so
and of course...
That's the way they want to play. Go for it. Good luck.
And of course, Courty, I'm duty-bound to shoehorn Nottingham Forest into
how are you going to shoehorn them in now?
Well, because I want to thank you, because way back at Christmas, you were saying that Forest, the mighty trees can avoid the drop. It's looking like we might squeak it. We might survive.
You could well do. And the thing is, you know, I have often been the kiss of death, and I didn't actually tell you that, which was the reason I tipped them to be OK. But it could well be. So only a couple of games left. Very tight at the bottom of the Premier League. So,
it is.
You know,
very tight. Tight as a nuns. What's it now, then? Tonight, Man City. Talk us through that, because, I mean, we're talking about legacy here. We're talking about striving for greatness. What are the chances?
Well, you said just in the headlines there about Pep Guardiola saying they could be seen as a great manager no matter what happens. They like to play down the fact that the Champions League is the only gap that's there in the trophy cabinet. Now, they're going for the treble. FA Cup final is coming up against Manchester United. You know, the Premier League is as good as done. They just need one win. But really, and I don't care what any Manchester City fan says, whether they go, oh, we don't really care about the Champions League, it's all about the Premier League. It's not. It's about the Champions League. You've got Real Madrid have won it 14 times. We know how wily, we know how good they are. I think this time, though, I really do think that this is Manchester City's year. So it's all level at 1-1. It's the Etihad tonight, and it's Real Madrid. And if they manage to get through that, you would think that they'd be able to beat Inter Milan in Istanbul for the final. But this is the game tonight. It's a huge game.
It is. And in the same city, let's talk about that Sheikh Jassim increasing his bid to 5 billion quid to buy Man United. Man United fans, again, they might put their ethics to one side. If they can get all that money, they can challenge City again at the top. They'll be dying for this deal to go through, won't they?
Let's be honest, a lot of football fans, and we will be honest about this, would put ethics to one side. We've seen it with Newcastle. We see it with so many different... We see it with boxing as well, about the fights that are going on. But, you know, with this sort of money that's coming into the club, they're desperate for the Glazers to go. I still wondering, I think this is dragging on and on. How long is this going to go on for? We've had first bids, then we've had second bids. Now we're looking like third bids. We're talking about $5 billion. So Jim Radcliffe is making bids. But whether anything's actually going to be accepted, and they're going, well, yeah, OK, you go up to 6 million, or go up to 6 billion, maybe you go up to 7 billion. I don't know when it's going to end. I don't know whether they're just trying to stall it and just keep fans off their back. I don't know. But it does look like 100% of the club, £5 billion. What's the difference between 5 billion and 6 billion?
And it'd be interesting, no doubt, to see Gary Neville once again put his morals to one side. He did it in Qatar. No doubt he'll do it again here, Courtney, when they come in.
We will see. Yeah, we will see.
Their billions. You got anything else? He's got a little bit of cricket?
Yeah, a little bit of cricket. Now, Jofra Archer, a fantastic fast bowler, Jofra Archer, as you know, is now out of the Ashes, which is unfortunate. There's this injury to the elbow. There's Jofra there. He's a great bowler, but the thing is, he'd been out for about 2 years with this elbow injury. And when you're a fast bowler, obviously this is one of the tools of your trade, and that's going to take a pounding. He's gone over to the IPL to play over in India, and then he's broken down and it's been injured. So now he's got to have an operation. So that's not good. And we've got Johnny Bairstow is also back as well. He's going to be back in the fold. But both really bizarre. They both have very, very bizarre injuries over the past year. So Jofra Archer, this is separate from the elbow. A bizarre fish tank injury. Did you hear about that? Hand in the fish tank. No. Fish tank broke. I don't know how the fish were. Cut his hand very badly and couldn't play. Johnny Bairstow, a bizarre golfing injury where he'd actually slipped over on the green, twisted his ankle and broke his leg in 3 places. Oh dear. So, I mean, both of them, you've got to wrap them up with cotton wool. So we've got the Ashes coming up very soon. Ireland first, which is at the start of June, and then the Ashes on the way.
All right, Courtney, we've got to stop it there. It's always a pleasure, never a chore, and I hope you haven't put the kiss of death on Forrest.
I will try my best not
If you have, I'll come and get you.
OK, all right.
Anyway, cheers, mate. Thank you.
Stay with us now. We'll be discussing Princess Anne's tribute to 2 million veterans as we go through the papers with Biggins and Emily Carver next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 8:37. Let's bring you up to date with this morning's front pages now.
And the Times is leading with Sir Keir Starmer's vow to build more homes on the Greenbelt.
And the Express focuses on Rishi Sunak's message to European judges as he tells them to stop meddling in Britain's illegal migrant plans.
The Mirror features the former Tory-turned-Reform Party backer Anne Widdecombe. She says no one has the right to cheap food.
Widders being widders again. Widders alert. The Mail says working from home fuels the UK's sick note crisis. They've also published a picture of actor Michael Douglas in Cannes being kissed by his wife and daughter. Wonderful picture.
Very lucky man indeed. And finally, The Sun goes with "We're not guns for hire, Harry," as the Duke of Sussex is blasted for demanding armed Met Police officers.
And join us now to go through the papers for one last time. In more detail is the actor, entertainer, and, of course, British national legend, Christopher Biggins, alongside, of course, columnist and GB News presenter, and also a legend, Emily Carver. Thanks for joining us this morning. Biggins, let's kick straight to you. A story from The Mirror. Princess Anne's tributes to 2 million veterans.
Yeah, let's talk about a real royal person. She's the best, I think.
She is wonderful.
Unbelievable.
Apart from her hairdo, but that's irrelevant. Carry on.
I would have quite happily seen her crowned queen, actually, funny enough. I think she's wonderful. Anyway, the Princess Royal was in yesterday in Staffordshire praising 2 million veterans. Since conscription finished, there are these men who did amazing things in the war with, and it was a great tribute yesterday to them. And she said that we recognise the nation owes all of them a huge debt of gratitude for that service. And if I may, on behalf of the entire country, take this opportunity to thank them all. And she did it with such grace and so beautifully. She's wonderful.
Yeah, she is super.
And those men, you know, really did fight in the most terrible conditions.
Yeah, that generation, the war generation.
Yeah.
That's a nice story.
It is a nice story.
It is a nice story.
Yes, we like that.
We don't often have nice
Well,
stories.
we've got another one. Emily, you've chosen this about how our children are the best at reading in the Western world. I nearly choked on...
Well, you know what?
Reading.
Oh, sorry, reading.
I think it's become a national sport to slag off our country as much as possible.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
to be fair, there has been a lot of negative headlines for a long time now. But this is one good news one, and I'm not sure if I believe it, but I'm going to believe it. And apparently, English pupils are now the 4th best readers in the world. So only Singapore, Hong Kong and Russia are above us. We're the best in the West. Yes, which is also strange, isn't it? Russia is number 3 when it comes to reading skills for children.
They're probably fake,
instantly suspicious now of this
Yeah.
survey. So who's this by? Who's this according to?
This is according to the Progress in International Reading Literacy study, which is published every 5 years. England has risen from 8th to 4th place. And this may be to do with the way that we've changed the way we teach phonetics, which is something that Michael Gove, I think, pioneered, but Rishi Sunak's picked up as well. I think we're teaching it quite well, actually, believe it or not.
Yeah, you're
so people are reading more.
It is wonderful to hear a story that kind of bigs up British kids. We hear so many bad things. Oh, they're so depressed. Now they've fallen behind at school. So it's just, I think it gives parents hope. My kids love reading. I've read to my kids, you know, when I was like knee-high to a grasshopper. In fact, I find it very hard at the moment. My daughter is now 9, and I'm the one that doesn't want to get rid of her first childhood books because I want to keep them.
Hungry Caterpillar.
Yeah, there's just beautiful books.
This is my favourite side to you, Martin. This is absolutely.
He's actually a sweetie pie.
He's such a softie when he talks about his kids. It's lovely. Well, let's leave that on two lovely positive stories. Let's talk about nasty wasps, shall we, Biggins? Summer just got swarmer.
I know. I mean, we're just about to... it's going to be a lovely summer, according to all the statistics, and we are expected to have 235 billion wasps attack us.
Wow.
I mean, it's a terrifying thought. I'm really scared of wasps. I've been stung once. I was at the top of a ladder. It went up my leg and stung me in a very odd position.
Are you the type of person who, if you're sitting outside eating your meal, you'll rush inside with your food?
Well, I will go a bit bananas, I have to say. I mean, it's not an attractive thing being stung by a wasp.
No.
I was in the garden yesterday. Had that awful situation when the school called me to pick up my daughter, and she didn't want to come home because she wasn't well, but she was fine. Anyway, we ended up in the garden watering the plants because it was a sunny afternoon, and suddenly I just heard this crazy swarm, and I looked up, and it was like something out of Winnie the Pooh. It was this... I mean, no other way to describe it. Hundreds and hundreds of I don't know if they're bees or wasps whizzing past the house, and then I moved on. I was really glad that I'm allergic, so I was really afraid.
Are these like those foreign wasps that come over here and invade and, you know...
Invade our garden.
They're from
I
China.
don't care what they are. All I know is they sting, and it's not very nice at all. I mean, it really ruins one's summer.
We'll have to keep them on a barge.
Yes, I think what the secret is to actually put something in a glass, like honey, isn't it?
Yeah, also, if you have a healthy bird population, they do well to control and manage wasps. But you go to a lot of Greek islands where there's no trees, there's no birds, and then you've just got tons and tons of wasps. Anyway, this is the story I wanted last hour, Emily. You snuck it in. Well done. In the mail.
In the mail, yes, here it is. This is about ChatGPT, the AI thing that writes things for you, this technology. Now, the boss has come out and said that his biggest worry is all the harm that AI could cause us. And we're seeing a bit more of this than I would like to see. We're seeing all the people who have been most involved in creating this technology and advancing it, all coming out in the papers and in the media at various conferences around the world to actually warn against it. And I'm thinking, if the people who know the most about this technology are now all coming out to advise against it or warn against the potential harms, we should be all a bit worried. And I am worried about this because I talked to my sister, who's very clever. She studied physics at Oxford, very clever girl, works in banking now. And she talks about how these AI bots, they learn exponentially. They just get cleverer and cleverer. They never need to rest. They're already more intelligent than we are. They can just lap up information and then go from there. And we just learn in a linear way.
Yeah. Well, so
they're going to take over the world,
has been
essentially.
this huge development in particularly in finance, hasn't it, over the last 10 years or so? And all the schools are like, we must teach coding so that kids can go on and get into quants and all of that. My husband was explaining to me that it's totally redundant now. Nobody needs to code because the AI are doing it all for you. And you say to them, find a formula that works this out, and it can do it without even a pause. But this was really interesting, that the boss of ChatGPT giving evidence in Congress to the States yesterday, actually concerned about the implications for the elections in the States next year due to AI. And then that has huge consequences. If you introduce legislation in countries, which are sensible and right thinking, but unless they're globally enforced, you've got countries like North Korea, Russia, with the capabilities to, who knows what, overturn all sorts of democratic processes. And I think we have to really take these alarm klaxons really, really seriously.
It is worrying about elections because we've seen just how much AI and algorithms have been able to divide us online on social media. It wasn't the aim of the social media companies, but the algorithms give you what you want to see, and then you get more and more extreme and stuck in your ways.
I'd like to just come in defence of AI momentarily, if I could, because in a previous life, I helped write a men's mental health chatbot that men could get on their phones, and we'd been doing a lot of serious work about male suicide reduction and why weren't men going to GPs. Why weren't they going to psychotherapists? Because they didn't like to talk in that way. And when we gave them an AI app, a chat bot, they were 3 times more likely to talk to a chat bot than they were to even talk to their partner. And we got some astonishing acknowledgements out of men. And it really is, I think, a tool that can be, when it's implemented in the correct way, can be incredibly useful. Not all AI is bad.
No, I think that's true. But and I think that's why it's been encouraged and developed so much. It's been exciting possibilities, hasn't it? But I think we're now hearing so many senior voices, whether it's Elon Musk, the boss of ChatGPT, we've had the head of GCHQ. I can't even remember who else has been speaking.
An Israeli guy as well. I don't know which one he's on.
It is worrying, and we have to take it seriously.
I wonder if viewers I wonder if viewers at home think that AI could do all of our jobs better.
I could do my
It might be more accurate sometimes than me.
Well, you know, Tom Hanks actually was talking about it yesterday, and he was saying he's worried that, he was saying that after he's died, there may be many films made with Tom Hanks in.
Absolutely.
And where does that leave their...
Other actors.
Other actors, but also their copyright. If you don't get to have control over what films you're appearing in, what content is, how would you feel about that?
Well, it's a very difficult situation, and I think it's something you've got to think about. I mean, and now, you know, it's bad enough being a young actor getting work, but it'll be almost impossible.
Yeah, but you must like the idea of a virtual Biggins performing for eternity.
I like the idea
yes,
of that.
I think it's a very good idea.
A virtual Biggins.
Forever and ever, amen.
And on that note, let's stay with you, Chris. Just Stop Oil making... even fewer friends. A bit of argy-bargy going on now.
In Chancery Lane yesterday, they blocked the traffic. And, of course, the trouble is the public took their own version of... They tried to push them away and stop them. And I don't blame them because, you know, these things happen and they hold up so much. And people can't get... for instance, if an ambulance is coming through or a fire brigade or whatever, they can't... They hold these people up and something could be disastrously happening. I mean, it could be just awful. I mean, I feel for them and I know what they're trying to do, but they should think a little bit more about what they're doing.
I thought it was against the law now to blockade a road.
Well,
I part of the public order bill.
Yes.
Only if it's in relation to the coronation.
Right, it's all a bit confusing the way the law is applied.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see the back of them, but something I do like, Emily, this one's getting me excited. There's no room for snobbery when it comes to snacks. Greggs have won an historic late-night licence. Tell us about that.
I'm sure, as your viewers will know, there has been a bit of a legal dispute over whether Greggs in Trafalgar Square, Leicester Square, in London's West End, can stay open beyond midnight. And it seems like Greggs has won.
Great.
You can get a steak bake till 2 a.m. now on a Thursday and a Friday.
I mean, it makes sense. How was it right that Burger King could stay open but Greggs couldn't? I mean, apart from anything, Greggs is British.
But apparently they can't get tea and coffee because they're worried about people urinating.
What?
Are you serious?
So I think it's only food
in the shop?
Yes.
You mean they don't have a toilet in there, you mean? There's no premises where they can...
Yes, this is what they were worried about, urination. But anyway, you are allowed to have a sausage roll now after midnight on a Thursday and Friday, not a Saturday night, I don't think.
Yeah.
Not a Saturday night.
It's all a bit weird, isn't it?
Very
Westminster
odd.
Council have been very peculiar over this. I can understand because there probably are a lot of louts outside in the West End.
Urinating.
I think that's good.
Misbehaving.
A bit of equality in the meat-based snack sector.
Yeah, we're big sausage fans. It's going to finish on. I'm not going to ask your comment on that.
Please don't.
We will say goodbye to Biggins and Emily Carver. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you with us this morning.
Superb. Well, it's 8:49 and let's bring you up to date with today's top stories now. First, the government will introduce a renters' bill allowing tenants to challenge poor landlords without being evicted. The Housing Secretary says too many renters live in damp, unsafe and cold homes without the power to demand higher standards. The reform will also reduce notice periods for renters that act irresponsibly.
The Prime Minister says European leaders must stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes as it continues to fight against Russia's invasion. Rishi Sunak told the Council of Europe summit that the UK may have left the EU, but it hasn't left Europe. He also called on Russia to be held accountable for war crimes.
And the Treasury Committee says cryptocurrency trading should be regulated as gambling due to scams and money laundering concerns. The government says it's taking an agile approach to regulate the crypto market.
OK, now it is the 76th Cannes Film Festival kicking off. The red carpets have been rolled out, and Jean du Barry, is that suitable?
Beautiful.
Is the film that was picked to open this year's event.
Yeah, it's a French biographical film about King Louis XV and stars Johnny Depp in the starring role. And here's a sneak preview.
La Comtesse Jade du Barry.
Surtout, ne regardez pas le roi dans les yeux. Ce serait perçu par la cour comme une invitation.
Une invitation à quoi?
À la bagatelle.
I mean, what's not to love about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got everything.
How did the premiere go down, though, with the audience? Of course, I'm no film critic. Let's speak to our showbiz reporter, Stephanie Tecci, who's lucky enough to be joining us live from what looks like a very sunny Cannes this morning, Steph.
It is sunny. Actually, the rain has managed to hold off because it was predicted that it was going to be quite a grey Cannes, but luckily I haven't brought the British weather with me, Isabel and Martin.
Good. So how did the premiere go down last night?
Well, Johnny Depp was moved to tears because he actually received a 7-minute standing ovation beforehand, before the premiere. It's been marred with controversy whether this should be the film to open the Cannes Film Festival. Over the past year, obviously, Johnny Depp has had his legal battles with Amber Heard, his ex-wife. And, you know, in the film industry, and both in Hollywood and Britain, they've been trying to support the Me Too movement. So a lot of film critics and the film industry have said, well, this does the opposite by bringing Johnny Depp to open the Cannes Film Festival. But the creative director, Terry Famu, of the Cannes Festival, he said it's all about the justice system. And of course, Johnny Depp was found not guilty. And the Cannes Film Festival is all about freedom of expression.
It's an extraordinary turnaround, isn't it, Stephanie? Because, I mean, here was a guy who was one of the most vilified people in Hollywood. And it's quite a gamble to take, pardon the pun, a can of worms could have been opened by getting him there. But by all sounds, he's been fully rehabilitated back into the industry here.
Yeah, I can say this is basically a here's Johnny moment, and he's definitely been redempted by the film industry, and rightly so, because I watched the film yesterday and it's amazing. He's done no wrong. He doesn't speak a word of English in it, but it's still a gripping film, and I think it deserved to open the film festival. And I think it's kind of a snub to cancel culture because, you know, there's many Hollywood actors who have been cancelled over little things, big things, and I think Johnny Depp's quite lucky to have survived and actually still be filming and still be honoured the way he was last night.
Steph, any other highlights to share with us from Cannes? We're looking at pictures this morning on the front of the Mail of Michael Douglas being kissed by his beautiful daughter Caris and, of course, our very own Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Well, last night, Michael Douglas opened the film festival as he received the Palme d'Or honour. So he received that in recognition of his amazing career, which spans over 5 decades, and also his support to the cinema industry. He made quite a joke last night and said that he's older than the Cannes Film Festival, but he feels very honoured to receive this. And I think he is one of cinema's greats. And I think that's the amazing thing about the Palme d'Or honour. It honours people who have made that magnitude contribution to cinema.
And it's funny, Stephanie, we had a section earlier about how old is too old to flaunt it. And I think we can agree, speaking for the gentleman watching today, Catherine Zeta-Jones, she's still got it.
Yeah, 53.
Yeah, she looks astonishing. Who else is out there, and what gossip have you got for us backstage?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, I was wondering if you've been hobnobbing with the rich and famous, you've been hanging around the haunts. Any kind of backstage gossip for us, Steph?
Well, yesterday it was the Ritz-Carlton Hotel which reopened again, and there was an opening VIP dinner, and you had people such as Naomi Campbell turned up. Helen Mirren, by the way, looked amazing with her blue hair. Last year she went for pink hair, but this year she looked amazing with blue, and that was quite a star-studded dinner. Like, the Ritz-Carlton Hotel is one of the hot spots in the Croisette, so, you know, to have that opening dinner was quite amazing. And there's going to be so many parties that are going to be coming through, because obviously on Thursday we've got the Indiana Jones premiere with Harrison Ford and Phoebe Waller-Bridge, so I can imagine that's going to have a really big turnout as well.
Oh, there we go. We're looking out for Helen Mirren there. I wanted to see the new take on a blue rinse, but I couldn't see a picture. I'm going to look it up. Steph, we'll let you get back to the festival. Have a wonderful time. We're not jealous at all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No, we are. You're going to need some staying power out there. I've had friends who've been out there before, and the parties go on non-stop.
Yeah, out on the super yachts, and they all get adorned in beautiful diamonds, and it is the epitome of glamorous, isn't it, the Cannes Film Festival?
Why are you here and not there, Is?
I don't know.
Yeah.
No invite. Right, stay with us. We're going to have more for you coming up shortly on the government's new plan to hand more power to renters. Stay with us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The government moves to ban no-fault evictions as it launches a new crackdown on rogue landlords.
Good morning. It's 9 o'clock on Wednesday, the 17th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel, Webster and Martin Dorkney.
Yeah, and here's what's leading the news this morning. The government is today launching new measures to protect tenants with a pledge to tackle injustice in the private rental sector. The plans include a banning of Section 21, which allows landlords to evict tenants without any reason.
Well, it comes as Sir Keir Starmer vows to make Labour the party of house building with a pledge to build more homes on the Greenbelt.
The Prime Minister will fly to Japan today, where he will unveil a new defence and technology pact with the country. On the trip, he will also join allies, including US President Joe Biden, where he will attempt to galvanise further support for Ukraine.
And the Princess of Wales has admitted that she never expected to become a royal before she fell in love with Prince William. Speaking at an event alongside Dame Kelly Holmes, she added she's still learning every day how to be a princess. And we think you're doing a great job.
Yeah, and that particularly touched you, I think, that story. The fact she's got the humility to say that, as opposed to the other one, who seems to have no humility at all. Anyway, we want to hear what you think this morning. Of course, email us gbviews@gbnews.uk or, of course, tweet us @gbnews.
Right, our top story this morning, the government will move to ban no-fault evictions as part of a set of major new reforms to the rental sector.
Yes, under a bill being tabled today, landlords will no longer be able to evict tenants without any reason, but they will be handed more powers to remove antisocial tenants.
Well, it comes as Sir Keir Starmer vows to make Labour the party of house building with a pledge to build homes on UK's Greenbelt.
And earlier we spoke to Transport Minister Richard Holden, who said Labour was all talk.
Well, look, I'd just say over the last 10 years, we've built 2.2 million homes right across the UK. And actually, let's look where Labour are in power here in London. Actually, the highest both house starts and house completions were under that's Conservative Mayor of London. We've seen when Labour are actually in power, they don't actually do what they say they want to do, which is quite clear when you've got Sadiq Khan here in London. But just onto the renters reform areas. Look, I rented a house until I was in my mid-30s. I think sensible changes to say that people should be able to have pets, should be able to have children in their own home. I think it's perfectly reasonable. I think getting rid of no-fault evictions is sensible. But I think on the other side, I've also got issues when constituents come to me and say they've got a neighbour who the landlord's finding it really tough to get rid of, who's causing massive antisocial behaviour locally. I think that balance of being able to get rid of the person causing antisocial behaviour, but otherwise people should be able to have the peace and enjoyment of their own home, is really sensible and balanced reforms from Michael today.
Well, I hope you keep up with that. I think Richard Holden had about 17 coffees before that interview, but he certainly is very good at talking and not allowing any interjection, isn't he?
Well, someone who we hope will be good at talking too is the assistant editor of The Spectator, Cindy Yu, who joins us now for her take on this story. Look, it's clear that the rental sector, a bit of a Wild West at the moment, needs tightening up. But the question is, are there enough sweeteners in there for landlords, who are also incredibly important if you don't want to risk making the problem even worse and seeing a supply crisis if people move out of being landlords?
Well, look, leading landlord associations have now already come out to say that this actually is not good for landlords because of the reasons you've listed, Isabel, that actually it would clam up supply. But I think it's always a balance. In our system at the moment, that seems to be if the landlords have more power, the tenants have less power, and vice versa. So at the moment, what is the balance? And I think at the moment, given the housing crisis, we need to give tenants more power, because the other end of the supply problem with the housing crisis is that, if people don't mind renting so much, then they are able to create families, they are able to start homes in these rental properties. In countries like Germany, for example, people just don't really want to buy properties because their landlords are so friendly and so welcoming. No-fault evictions are not a thing. And so, if we can make rental a much more acceptable and safe way to kind of start a family and move forward with your lives, then that could also solve the housing crisis.
It's interesting, we're seeing new figures out on May the 25th. We're expecting to see net migration reach as high as possibly 1 million. That's Nottingham and the Leeds combined every single year. NIMBYism has to stop at some point. There has to be a breakthrough. Is Starmer's answer to build on the Greenbelt, though? Is that the solution?
Well, yes, unfortunately, I do think that. I mean, that's part of the solution. I think we also need to build upwards. I was reading recently this comparison of density, actually, in Anglophone countries. Our cities are much less dense than in other Western countries like Spain and France, where they build upwards. And actually, because we don't build upwards, we sprawl out and we tackle more of the greenbelt than other countries do. So we don't have to do that. So it's either, but we have to build more somewhere, right? We can't just not build. And it's interesting to watch Richard Holden saying, when they're in power, they don't do what they say they will. Was he talking about the Labour Party or the Conservative Party? Because I thought the Conservative Party was going to solve the housing crisis. Rishi Sunak, until last year, was going to uphold this housing housing target, which is now dropped. You know, so which party is he talking about there?
And that brings up Michael Gove in all of this. He was sort of outlining some of these plans he's bringing in today at the NatCon conference. And, you know, he's had a tough time in this particular portfolio, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Because he's failed with being able to bring in those housing reforms because of NIMBYism. Backbenchers saying, well, we'll lose our seats if this goes ahead. And obviously the Conservatives don't want that. So will he have more success, do you think, with these rental reforms? Or, you know, I mean, the Telegraph will tell us that there's dissent within the party even on these measures.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's just hard, it seems, to get the Conservative Party to agree on anything these days, anything that with long-term outcomes as well. It does seem like politicians tend to just be looking at short term, what's going to win them the next vote, and that is really disappointing. But I think that's why Michael Gove was put in that position, because it's such a tricky situation. If you remember, Robert Jenrick, before as Housing Secretary, just couldn't really make much headway.
OK, Rishi Sunak is in Tokyo. It's time for the G7. Out in Japan, trying to make friends. G7 has found itself a new purpose with the war in Ukraine. Of course, Donald Trump famously didn't even bother to turn up. Is anything going to happen this time, or is it just another global talking shop?
Yes, I think it will be a talking shop. The problem at the moment is it's not just Ukraine, it's also China. Japan is very, very keen to get everyone on side with its thoughts on how to stop China's economic coercion, or what they call economic coercion, get all of the G7 countries to come together and really kind of face up against that threat together. Japan is also keen to get all of these developing countries that China is so good at making friends with to come to the G7 as well, countries like Brazil, countries like Vietnam, to come to the table. But can they actually succeed? I mean, there's so many rifts within the G7 at the moment that it does seem difficult to really kind of do anything world-changing at one of these things. But it is important to have these regular summits so that the world leaders do see each other and do keep communicating.
And, you know, perhaps it won't be a sort of G7 unified outcome, but certainly just with the host nation, Japan, the UK is hoping to announce a big cooperation pact. Can you tell us any more about that?
Yeah, so this is actually a renewal of a pact that has already come and is mainly focused on defence technology and other high-tech areas. Semiconductors, for example, renewables industry. All of these things are things that Japan does so incredibly well. And you know, as we've already hinted at, the UK doesn't actually do very well in a lot of these cutting-edge technologies. So kind of having that pact, sharing the research expertise, sharing the research funding will be very, very good, I think. I mean, Japan is now a larger economy than the UK is. I mean, it's the third largest economy. So this is a partner that the UK really needs.
OK, Cindy Yu, thank you very much indeed.
Superb. OK, Prince Harry has been told by the Home Office that police are not for hire as private bodyguards as his security row continues.
The Duke offered to pay for protection from the armed squad when he is in the UK, but he took the Home Office to court after the proposal was declined.
Well, joining us now is our royal correspondent Cameron Walker after a legendary coronation session from you, my old son. Well done on that.
Thank you.
So let's talk about this. Harry, once again on his global not having any publicity tour, his sixth High Court battle, this time with the Met. He's basically trying to hire the best cops in the land, and they're saying no.
Yeah, Prince Harry back in court. Of course, it was a decision taken in 2020 by the Home Office for Prince Harry not to allow him to pay for his own police protection when he's in the UK. Prince Harry argues that he should be allowed to do that. Prince Harry's lawyer yesterday in court said that there is actually a law dating back to 1996 which allows the chief officer of the Metropolitan Police, for example, to receive payment for the officer's service. But the lawyer for the Home Office is saying this isn't about crowd control at a football match. This isn't about crowd control at a marathon or something like that. This it's not appropriate. The lawyer for the Home Office is arguing for wealthy people to essentially buy Metropolitan Police protection. And actually, there was another lawyer that spoke on behalf of the Metropolitan Police yesterday in court, and they were saying that police officers put themselves quite literally sometimes in the line of fire. Yeah. And it's up to the Home Office to decide whether a police officer putting their life at risk is in the public interest or not. And they are essentially saying it cannot be right for a private individual for it to be in the public interest for a police officer to put their life at risk. So that's the arguments that are being presented in court yesterday. The case is very much continuing, and the judge is going to decide at a later date whether Prince Harry can be can get a judicial review on this.
So whilst we've got all these multiple court cases ongoing, which Prince Harry's been pushing through the British court system, he's been out on the red carpet with the Duchess last night. Yes. She was being given an award. Tell us more. Looking fabulous, it has to be said.
She was. I know, she definitely looks like a proper Hollywood A-lister, doesn't it? Which, as some people would argue, was perhaps Meghan Markle's dream all along. Yes, so the Duchess was receiving the Miss Foundation's Women of Vision Award, recognising her global advocacy to empower and advocate on behalf of women and girls. Clearly, even before she met Prince Harry, she was very much an advocate in championing women and girls' rights. She spoke at the UN Women's Conference. But clearly, some people would argue this was incompatible with being a working member of the royal family, which is perhaps one of the reasons why she decided to step back as a working member along with Prince Harry. So some people are
How is it
arguing.
incompatible? I mean, I look at the Queen and the work she does for domestic abuse, osteoporosis, female-centred campaigns that she cares a lot about, literacy as well. I mean, she's been able to bring about lots of good work. I don't necessarily accept that she had to leave the royal family if she wanted to be a true feminist.
No, I think that is perhaps one of the arguments. I think some people are saying that it is the wrong side of a line when it comes to Meghan and what she was perhaps saying in the speeches. So, for example, I'll just read you what she said yesterday as part of her acceptance speech. She said, "Part of my greater value and purpose in life was to advocate for those who felt unheard, to stand up to injustice and to not be afraid of saying what is true and what is just and what is right." And that line, not being afraid of saying what is true, what is just and what is right, some people perhaps would argue sometimes strays over the line of perhaps being too political. For example, with the Queen, as you're talking about, Queen Camilla standing up for domestic violence victims and things like that. It's always a lot of being seen and being in a particular situation which shines a light on these issues rather than directly talking about it in a political situation.
I don't know. It only seems like 5 minutes ago that being a princess was an outdated gender norm, and it was like saying that all you have to do is marry someone famous to make it. Now she's getting a feminist award. Sticks in my craw. Anyway, I'm not the judging panel. Let's talk about Kate. Because Kate, we're saying all morning, she's still learning to be a princess. A wonderful line.
Indeed, yes. So Princess Catherine, she was in Bath yesterday talking to a group of school students, teenage girls who have particularly struggled with their mental health. It's part of... they are basically given mentoring from athletes from the Dame Kelly Holmes Trust. This is Catherine yesterday arriving. There's Dame Kelly Holmes there. Took part in a few sporting activities with them, as you can see. But what's caught headlines this morning is actually a private chat that she had with these girls, which Dame Kelly Holmes then told journalists about. And the girls were essentially given the opportunity to ask Kate anything that they wanted. And they asked her, did she actually want to be a member of the royal family? To which Kate replied, it wasn't something she expected, but she fell in love with William, and clearly that came with the job. But she also said it's basically something that you have to learn. And she also pointed out that she's not the best at public speaking, in her words. This is Princess of Wales, and that she still is working on her projection, even now, having been a member of the royal family since 2011, which I think perhaps is showing the human side to Catherine, showing that not everybody is perfect, and she accepts and is willing to talk about any flaws she may have.
I mean, it is rare to hear anybody criticise her, really. She barely puts her foot wrong. She's, you know, modest, but at the same time, she looks the part. She's hugely supportive. I mean, she's doing a great job. If she says she's still learning, it feels very natural, the role. She's taken it very gracefully.
Absolutely, and this is all part of Mental Health Awareness Week, which is why she was in Bath yesterday at the Dame Kelly Holmes Trust. She is expected to carry out a separate mental health engagement in London tomorrow, but it all stems back to this basically her early childhood development initiative, which she launched, called Shaping Us a few months ago. And she basically thinks that the first 5 years of a child's life really impacts them, and it can really impact them later on in life. So when it comes to mental health, when it comes to addiction, all of these problems seem to stem, what the Princess has found out in researchers, from the first 5 years of life. So that's what she's championing at the moment.
OK, Cameron, thank you for that wonderful update.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Right, it's 9:14. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
And the Prime Minister says European leaders must stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes as it continues to fight against Russia's invasion. Rishi Sunak has told the Council of Europe summit that the UK may have left the EU, but it hasn't left Europe. He also called on Russia to be held accountable for its war crimes.
2 poultry workers in England have tested positive for bird flu, although there are no signs of human-to-human transmission. Both cases are believed to be linked to the same farm, and the UK Health Security Agency has launched an investigation.
And Johnny Depp has made a dramatic return to the red carpet on the opening day of the Cannes Film Festival. The Hollywood actor stars as King Louis XV in Jean de Barry. Not as good as your pronunciation there, getting better. It's his first major on-screen appearance since his high-profile defamation case with his ex-wife Amber Heard.
He received a standing ovation, didn't he? 7 minutes. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Amazing turnaround.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we're going to go to The Point, find out what Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner have coming up for us at 9:30. Good morning to you both. What's in store?
Morning to you.
Morning.
We're talking about this big shake-up in the rules regarding renting flats. It's meant to be a great news for tenants, but I don't think it's very good news for landlords.
I don't think so. This rental revolution, which actually, if you're one of those people who's worked really hard, you've bought one second home, you rent it out to students or, you know, young workers, professionals, then the power is going to be much more in the hands of the tenant as opposed to the homeowner.
And they're going to tell the landlord if they want to have children, they can have children. And if they want pets, what if they want a serpent?
Anyway, we're going to be digging into that a little bit more.
Liz Truss in Taiwan making that speech saying China must not be trusted. Well, she's right about that, but it's another unhelpful thing for Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, we got a packed show this morning, guys.
OK, Andrew, Bev, I've seen you got some very tasty viewing figures. Well done on that. What else you got on the menu?
Oh, thank you very much for congratulating on our tasty viewing figures. Yeah, GB News is just on the up, actually. So, you know, thank you for everybody who's finding us in the morning. Everything else is quite boring at this time of the day, isn't it, when we're on?
Yeah, but not breakfast, of course.
No,
breakfast is marvellous.
I mean, when we're on the telly, everyone's tired of everything else mid-morning. So, yeah, thank you for everybody who's tuning in. We've got a couple of good guests as well to go through all the main stories in the papers this morning.
And, of course, we're going to be talking about Meghan Markle winning that award for being a woman of great vision. Really?
And kindness, and the fact that she uses phrases like, you know, you can become the visionary of your own life.
Yeah, she's won it from a major feminist. How's being a feminist making your daughter princess? Does that work?
No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I've seen much of her behaviour in the last few years as epitomising kindness.
Quite.
To be fair.
Well, there we go. Spicy as always. We love you both. Thanks ever so much. And stay with us. There'll be one little segment left to go in the programme. We've been looking forward to this all morning, talking about the happiest and the saddest places in the country. We've got our views. You've got yours. Let's find out what the stats say after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 21 minutes past 9 and we're talking about happiness. Are you feeling happier than at this time last year?
I am, actually, but a new survey has revealed that nationally, a quarter of Brits said their happiness declined over the last year, with the biggest drop-off, 36%, in, you've guessed it, London.
On the flip side, just 15% said they felt less happy in the West Midlands. So we've sent our reporters out and about to find out more. And let's go first of all to our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, who joins us in London. Paul, are you happier than you were this time last year?
About the same, to be honest. Listen, like everyone else, I'm struggling with the cost of living, and so it's no surprise that people are really feeling the pinch when it comes to paying their bills, paying their debts. You know, it's difficult out there. If you look at this survey, actually, more than 3,000 people surveyed by the Centre for Economics and Business Research. A third are nationally worse off because of their mental health. A quarter are less happy. These are the lowest levels of happiness since early 2020. And the biggest reason, of course, is the cost of living. The rents rising astronomically, powered by inflation, powered by landlords leaving the market, powered by a lack of housing supply. Certainly here in London, rents have been, well, let me tell you, the average price of renting a property per month, this is according to Rightmove, £2,501 a month. That's up 14% on the year. The national average is 1,190. So it's swallowing up over a third of people's income, Londoners' income, and that's the highest proportion out of anywhere in the UK. Anyway, we've been chatting to Londoners this morning. This is what they've been telling us.
Been there probably about a year and a half, but I've had other friends who got good deals in COVID and they've had to move out because of the rent increase of like 30-odd%.
Yeah.
And people are looking at moving away out of London.
Are you thinking about that?
My tenancy doesn't end for another 8 months, so you just hope that it's all right.
But it's got to play. I mean, you must spend a lot of your income on rent.
Yeah. You do.
Yeah.
But,
and despite the money worries, which obviously is tough for everyone, would you say that you're feeling happy?
well, it's the sun shining. I'm still alive, so happy enough.
I mean, it is true. The sun is out.
Yeah, that guy is struggling with his rent, but he's still trying to keep a stiff upper lip. But look, it's tough out there. It's really tough financially. You know, public services are struggling as well. It's difficult to get a doctor's appointment, to get that referral, which you then have to wait years for if you want to get the operation, if you want to go back to work.
I know, Paul. I know. We know all the reasons we're miserable in London. We're going to cut you off because we want to be cheered up.
Yeah, so Paul, you've painted a suitably dour picture there of London. Jack Carson, live the West Midlands, mate. We're relying on you now to give us a shot in the arm for the final furlong of this programme. Tell us why people in the West Midlands are chuffed.
Well, this is one of the happiest places in the country, obviously, and it's because there's so many different reasons. A few people that have been walking by me and chatting to me this morning, very simple reasons as to why this area makes them a little bit more happy than maybe elsewhere in the country. It's that idea of community, closer-knit villages, towns, of course, and those green spaces, which you don't necessarily get the most expansive ones, of course, in London. You know, being able to go out in green spaces, big parks, enjoy meeting with people, picnics, all kinds of things like that. But these figures around unhappiness and happiness levels all come from the Health, Wealth and Happiness Index, which has also kind of been linking the levels of happiness in comparison to screen time. Apparently, we spend on average 4 hours a day outside of work on our screens, and that's meant that we've got the lowest levels of happiness since the COVID pandemic, which is quite something when you think, of course, of how strange those times were. This has all been done by LifeSearch, the insurance company who have been conducting this research, and they said it's worrying to see how low some of these levels are. But of course, here in the West Midlands, people are happier apparently than anywhere else in the country. I've been speaking to a couple of people this morning to find out why.
I don't know, I think there's just lots to do. I mean, Birmingham's gone through a massive regeneration time recently, hasn't it? We're local to here. We've got a lovely area called Cannock Chase, so just miles and miles of countryside. I'm really happy. I think ever since I've been on HRT the last 3 years, I'm even more happier.
There's a lot of greasy food. People seem to enjoy that.
Well, there we go. So quite obviously different reasons for maybe different generations as to why they're happy. I'm probably leaning more on the side of the greasy food side this morning. But yeah, Cannock seems to be a pretty happy place this morning.
OK, Jack in the West Midlands, thank you very much. And thank you also to Paul Hawkins. I'm not sure if he's still there and can hear us. I think he wanted to say some more bits, but I think we're saying goodbye, in fact. No more Paul. Thank you to both of them anyway. Lots of your views have been coming in about your favourite places and your least favourite places. I have to say, not many sticking up for London.
No, in fact, London's very downbeat, and I think Paul painted a suitably apocalyptic picture there. Thanks, Paul, for that.
Indeed. Listen, thank you so much for your company this morning. Thank you for your company as well, Martin. I'll be back with Stephen tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and thank you. And up next, it's Bev and Andrew with To The Point. Don't go anywhere.
Thank you. Good morning. We blame Sadiq Khan for the state of London.
Yes.
Nothing works. What else are we going to talk about? No matter if you are feeling a little down this morning, we're going to aim to cheer you up between now and midday as best we can.
We are. We're going to talk about this big revolution in renting properties. This is a big reform by Michael Gove. We're not sure it's going to be too enriching.
Yeah.
And also, Meghan Markle's won a big award for being caring and compassionate.
Kindness.
Really? Ask the royal family about that.
See you in a minute.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I have walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9:30 on Wednesday the 17th of May. This is To The Point on GB News with Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce.
Well, new rights for renters. The government unveils plans to protect tenants, they say, from unscrupulous landlords and unfair evictions. But is it fair?
And among the new rights, you can now apparently keep a pet in your rented property, whatever the landlord says. Is this really the government's business? And how does that help solve the housing crisis for the younger generation?
What if they want to have a serpent snake?